Chapter 246. When she left the Wave Rider in a hurry, she only brought her phone and credit card with her. Half a year had passed, and her phone had run out of battery. Thea did not have much pocket money, and her credit card was handled by the American Trust Fund. The hotel owner did not recognize it at all. Thea did not want to alarm the people in Star City. Fortunately, she had the help of the Owl Court. Although they did not have much influence here, they could still transfer a few thousand yuan to her. Faced with her request, Catherine Monroe obviously couldn't just transfer a few thousand yuan to her. She used some of her connections in the court to send her a bunch of emergency items in an emergency. In less than an hour, a group of men in black delivered a sizable amount of cash, clothes, and passports to Thea. The hotel owner, who was stunned, imagined a story of a princess from a wealthy family traveling by herself. He quickly vacated his best room for the extraordinary princess of a certain European country to rest. Thea tidied up a little. Then, she picked up her new phone and dialed the number of the Louvre Museum in France. "Excuse me, is Miss Diana Prince there?" After the call was connected, Thea asked nervously. Thea was confused by the long string of words on the other side of the phone. What did he mean? It sounded like French. As expected of a 1,000-year-old enemy. The whole world spoke English, but they still spoke French. Fortunately, Thea had learned a few words of French when Diana was still a child. Thus, she spoke to the Frenchman on the other side of the phone. Half an hour later, Thea put down the phone. F***CK, this guy definitely knows how to speak English, but he won't say it even if you beat him to death. Thea wanted to crawl over the phone and strangle him. It was so infuriating. Thea was very anxious. The other side of the phone chatted with her for half an hour. Where did Diana go? The receptionist on the other side of the line talked to Sia slowly for half an hour. Sia asked repeatedly, but the receptionist was not annoyed, but the meaning of her words was clear. There is no such person in the Louvre. Thea didn't tell Diana about her future because she didn't want to affect the timeline, and Diana was smart enough not to ask. Thea's initial joy was doused with cold water. The Eye of Horus did not have the ability to search the entire world. With a cold face, she picked up her things and left Turkey. On the way, he directly controlled a rich kid with magic and commandeered a motorboat to drive into the eastern Mediterranean. Thea arrived at Crete and searched in the opposite direction from where she left the island. After circling the island 3 times, she still could not find any trace of Paradise Island. She did not know if it was because Hippolyte did not want to see her, or because of the anti-magic field on the island. With nothing to show for it, Thea could only follow their footsteps until she found Diana in the small village in Belgium where the final battle with Ares took place. "You've been away for 3 months. I miss you so much. It's been 5 years. Did you come back safely?" "The humans fought another world war. I don't feel any signs of Ares' resurrection. They're so complicated. I'm going to travel the world. I miss you every day. The people of Africa are very hospitable. I like them very much. You've been away for 80 years. Do you still remember me? Come and find me." A black slate stood where Ares fell. It was densely covered with words. From between the lines, one could tell that Diana had been alone in this small village for many years. The words were filled with attachment and joy, but more than that, it was a strong love. Thea unsheathed the Godslayer. The blade was filled with fiery red magic. She swung the sword at a distance. Her full strength created a ditch half a meter deep and more than 10 meters long. "I didn't want to." Thea threw the Godslayer away and knelt on the ground. Her hands kept hitting the ground as tears flowed uncontrollably. The last time Diana left behind words was in 1998. There seemed to be signs that the female warriors of Paradise Island had left the island. She went to investigate. Thea's heart was in a mess. She did not know where Diana had gone. How could she find her in this sea of people? After telling her family in Star City that she was safe and that she would stay in Europe for a few days, Thea stayed alone in this village that was no longer suitable for human habitation due to the poisonous gas. From the various traces in the village, one could still see the scene of the battle. However, most of it was the emptiness that Diana had left behind. Every time Thea saw the traces of a lasso or a shield, she would laugh foolishly. "Hey! Shouldn't we be leaving? We've been here for 3 months. The one who spoke was Heifer, who had been tricked by Thea into staying in the luxurious maze. Thea only remembered her after staying here for a month. Heifer's personality was really good. She did not make a fuss when she heard about what happened to her. Instead, she would comfort her from time to time. Yeah, it's not a good idea to stay here forever. Anyway, we'll definitely meet again in the future. Thea finally adjusted her attitude. The two of them were no longer mortals. It was only 100 years. They could afford to wait. She took out her sword and engraved a paragraph under the stone slab, indicating that she had been here before. She also used the ancient language of Paradise Island to leave the name of Star City. As long as Diana arrived at Star City, they would be able to sense each other with the divine power of Artemis that originated from the same source. He called Heifer into the space ring. This guy couldn't be seen in the light. This was not 1918. The satellites in the sky were constantly whizzing past. When Sia was practicing the Eye of Horus a while ago, she saw with her own eyes a giant satellite in Earth orbit flying over Europe. The big logo of Wayne Enterprises on it showed that this was Batman's Watchtower space base. Batman couldn't let Heifer see Batman's strange bone structure. After 2 flights, she successfully returned to Star City. Moira had been sworn in as the mayor of Star City 2 months ago. Thea had watched the whole process live. After that, she said that she had something to do and hurried back to the small village. This time, she finally felt like she had returned home. First, she went to the city hall to see Moira. After that, she was completely overwhelmed by miscellaneous matters. The Black Uncle, Walter Steele, and Moira talked about something and the two parted peacefully. As the holder of the most shares of the group, Thea was already 18 years old and automatically took over the position of chairman of Quinn Group. After she took over, she did not make any major changes. She let the original vice president take over as the president and promoted Felicity to the position of vice president. She continued to lead the software department. Dr. Hoffman, who used to get along well with Thea, became the director of the newly established Applied Science Laboratory of Quinn Group. Thea found some less sensitive information from the Atom Man data for them to study first. After working for a month, she kept meeting with the heads of various departments and listening to the reports of the leaders of the branch companies. Large-scale brainwashing was actually the most convenient and fast way. However, in this era where superpowered people were everywhere, she did not dare to be so reckless. Once she was discovered by the heroes who were bored out of their minds, she would be regarded as a villain. Chapter 247. Thea sighed and threw away the pen in her hand. She then sent away a department head who was pretending to be a reporter but was actually a loyal subordinate to her. There were a lot of problems during the transition between the old and the new. The old officials had to be appeased, and the new subordinates had to be treated with respect. Things like sabotaging each other happened in her office every day. The Eye of Horus could only judge good and evil, but the ancient view of good and evil was very different from the modern view. Many people who were considered bad in the ancient times were actually strong and tough in the Quinn Group. Thea spent a lot of effort to identify these people and use them at key points. I seem to have forgotten something. Thea spun around in her chair and suddenly thought of something. Damn it! I forgot about Oliver. She had promised to bring him home, but it had been delayed for 3 months because of Diana. Was it too late? Of course it would be too late. Oliver must be working under Amanda as a secret agent, killing people everywhere. Based on his relationship with Amanda, it would not be difficult to get him back by paying the price. However, would Oliver, who was trapped in darkness, be able to see the light again without suffering in the future? Thea knew that Oliver was a cockroach. If she did not interfere with him, he would definitely be able to reach his former heights. Thea had gained a lot from the time travel, but there were still a few things that she needed to collect personally. First of all, there was Ninja Master's magic sword. According to Madame Jodo, this sword could absorb the magic power of the Isis talisman. For Sia, who lacked magic power, it was as important as sending charcoal in snowy weather. However, she had no idea where Nandarbat was. Malcolm had gone to Europe alone a month before she returned to Star City and did not leave any contact information. Batman and Talia also knew the address, but they might not be able to tell her since she was going to deal with their father-in-law. Ninja Master's boss was the demon of the 3 palaces. Thea shuddered at the thought of it. Although the demon was sealed, it was better to be safe than sorry. Superman, Diana, and the Flash had worked together to fight this guy, but they still could not break through his defense. With this kind of strength, he could probably fight Darkseid for a while. Thea really didn't think she could beat him. Another thing that would be of great help to him was the artificial intelligence hidden in the cutting-edge technology laboratory in Central City. Although Thea was now a magician, she had not forgotten about technological means. She was not that careless to steal things while wearing invisibility. Through the Court of Owls, they hired an unrelated assassin to scout the way. Thea saw the information of this female assassin named Elphira Stiller. It was unknown whether it was magically modified or a superpower, but the assassin held 2 daggers in her hands, and her hair could also control 2 daggers. Her influence data showed that this assassin had a mission completion rate of 100% and had never failed. Thea instructed the court to pay the deposit according to the agreement. The request was very simple. She only needed to investigate the laboratory. However, Thea still underestimated the reverse lightning from the 25th century. The assassin was discovered as soon as he entered the laboratory. The spectrometer, far infrared, vibration sensing floor, and various other systems rang loudly. In less than a minute, more than 10 guards with rifles appeared. The assassin was not bad. He was shot 3 times, but he managed to escape. He returned the deposit and refused to go back. She had underestimated the power of technology. The assassin's tragic experience was a blow to Thea's head. Now that she was relying more and more on magic, she had regained her respect for science. The various benefits of artificial intelligence made Thea unwilling to give up. The second time, she used Felicity's hacking skills to find a guard working in the laboratory. After subconsciously brainwashing him, she controlled him to go inside to scout for information. However, 3 hours after the guard entered the laboratory, he was detected to have abnormal mental fluctuations. Thea quickly activated his original personality and restored him to his normal values. After a series of checks, he was mistaken for being nervous and escaped death. Thea knew that she could not act rashly. There were too many people paying attention to the cutting-edge laboratory. Various consortiums, state governments, and the military had invested a lot of money in it. Even the Quinn Corporation had given a token amount of money. With so many people paying attention, reverse lightning would not be exposed easily, and she would not have a chance to act. Did she really have to wait until the particle accelerator exploded and only a few people were left in the cutting-edge laboratory? Thea shook her head. It was too long, and she was a little unwilling to wait. After careful consideration, it was still beneficial to be familiar with the plot. She set her sights on the important assistant of reverse lightning in the next few years, the bioengineering doctor, Caitlin Snow. Caitlin Snow did not enter the cutting-edge laboratory. Instead, she was teaching at Princeton. Thea was going to take a detour and apply for her postgraduate program. Then, she would sneak into the cutting-edge laboratory. The environment of Western society was very clear about personal identity. A billionaire could be a superhero, a prince could be a soldier, and naturally, Thea could also be an intern. Originally, the school wanted to expel her because she did not report to school for a long time. However, when they heard that she was the president of the Quinn Corporation, they were speechless. A century-old school. Thea could only laugh. With her mind that had been transformed by divinity, she could graduate in half a year, get a master's degree in 1 year, and get a doctorate in 2 years. Having a doctorate title would subtly raise her social status. For example, Master Bruce, who was a peerless scholar, did not have a degree certificate. Even now, the media was scolding him for being ignorant and incompetent. Thinking about it, he felt wronged. Ninja Master was a long-term goal, and the cutting-edge laboratory was a medium-term goal. Thea's short-term goal was 1. She wanted to make big news. She wanted to make news that could be seen by the whole world. Then, Diana would be able to see her no matter where she was on Earth. If I can't find you, I'll let you find me. However, it was not easy to make news that could reach the world. Her mother had just entered the political world, so it definitely could not be a scandal. She needed to do something very eye-catching. Thea quickly found something that met all the requirements, and it would definitely attract Diana. She wanted to rebuild the Temple of Artemis. It seemed easy to knock down and rebuild a pile of broken stones in the wilderness. With Thea's political power, it was not a big deal to build a temple in Turkey. However, her request was not that simple. She wanted to attract the attention of the world's media. Thea wanted to knock down and rebuild one of the 8 wonders of the world. She wanted to recreate the glory of this ancient building in its original place. She had to face the world's scholars, experts, and news media. The resistance of this matter was unimaginable. Thea's plan was to secretly send the Court of Owls to bribe the local parliamentarians and several think tanks around the president of Turkey. On the surface, she would use her identity to get the permission of the US government. She had to make this big news in the shortest time possible. Chapter 248. Thea, you're crazy. Do you have a fever? To Thea, Felicity, who had not seen her for more than a year but had not seen her for at most 3 months, was furious. You want to demolish one of the 8 wonders of the world and rebuild it? It's such a big thing and you're hoping that no one will talk about it on the internet. How is that possible? Felicity was so angry that she did not care that she was in the CEO's office. Aren't I discussing it with you? Thea also knew that this was a big deal. She was going to find a few confidants to discuss a rough plan, but she was met with strong opposition at the first step. It's impossible for no one to talk about it. You're going against the entire history of human civilization. Felicity couldn't understand why a smart person like Thea would do something so strenuous and unrewarding. She continued to blabber on and on. Thea was also wondering if this news was too big. But considering that she had automatically arrived at the temple through the time channel, it was self-evident what the goddess was thinking. In order to find Diana and complete the goddess task, the temple must be rebuilt. For humans, there was a lot of historical and cultural value here. For the goddess, this was her temple. You made it look like a wasteland, a place where birds don't shit and chickens don't lay eggs. It's okay if it's a wasteland, but you humans still organize tens of thousands of people to visit it every day. What's the meaning of this? Are you here to laugh at me? No matter how miserable I am, I can't let you laugh at me. Whether it was to attract Diana's attention or to save the goddess' face, this temple must be demolished and rebuilt. Realizing that she had taken things for granted at first, Thea found Moira at night to talk about her idea. Rebuild the temple. Moira, who was reading a magazine, was stunned by her words. This was not within the business scope of the Quinn Group, was it? Thea looked at Moira's puzzled expression and knew that her words were a bit shocking. Normal people would definitely think that she was arrogant and frivolous. In order to gain Moira's trust and to pave the way for her to inject the divine blood in the future, Thea decided to show off a little. Mom, look. Thea kept looking at the furnishings in the house and found Moira's scarf. This is it. Transfiguration. A light green light flashed, and the originally still scarf seemed to be dragged by someone. It kept twisting and changing shape until it finally turned into a top hat. Thea waved her hand and put the hat in front of Moira, letting her personally judge its authenticity. Moira, who had lived for more than 40 years and believed that she had seen a lot, was really intimidated by her. At first, she thought that it was a magic trick. She held it in her hand and touched it again and again. Wow! It was indeed a hat, but how could it be? After a long while, he realized that this seemed to have something to do with today's topic. Moira chose her words carefully. Is this power the reason why you want to build a temple? Will it harm your body? As a mother, the first thing she thought of was not how powerful Thea was now. She only cared about whether her children were in danger. Thea did not dare to say too many things to Moira at once. Things like divine blood and divinity were too different from the worldview of ordinary people. Moira was just a nouveau riche president before, and now she was just a political newcomer. She was still far from the deep secrets of this world. She hugged Moira vigorously and the mother and daughter slowly floated in the air. Don't worry, Mom. Don't you think I'm getting healthier? Oh. Flying had always been a dream of human beings. Although they were now indoors and could only float in a small area, Moira was still excited. As a businesswoman, Moira had a deep understanding of the principle of how much you get, so she personally felt this extraordinary power. She also began to think about Thea's big news plan. You can't show up. At most, after everything is settled, you can participate in some activities as an important investor, but you can't make the decision. Moira also realized that today's Thea was no longer her spoiled daughter. After thinking repeatedly, she said to her seriously, Thea had a headache. Moira and Felicity's meaning was similar, but they were all the same. Thea's own prestige was not enough. Even if the people of the world agreed, how could Thea do it? What's more, the people of the world would not agree. As long as this matter was revealed, condemnation in speech and writing would be light. Prestige. Where am I supposed to find prestige? Killing a god was awesome, but the people did not know about it. She could not hold a press conference with the Godslayer and say that this sword stabbed Ares to death. The whole world would think that she was crazy. If you have to build this temple, I suggest that you push the government to be the main body to facilitate this matter. Moira's suggestion was not complicated. The American government had done so many things that angered the world, so it would not be a problem to do a few more. The government's artillery had even blown up an ancient city in Iraq, so it would not be too much to pull down another temple. The conversation between the mother and daughter lasted until late into the night. Moira used her own intelligence network to outline a few high-ranking officials who could influence the government and a few members of parliament who were inclined to the reformist party for Thea. In fact, this matter had a wide range of influence, but in fact, it did not affect the interests of all parties. It was not worth mentioning compared to sending troops to war. Under Moira's advice, Thea finally took back her decision to dig the first shovel herself. She was ready to be a participant. After all, her purpose was to attract attention, but who should she give this glorious and difficult task to? It was not easy to find a spendthrift. This spendthrift had to have a certain social reputation and thick enough skin to withstand the fierce opposition of the media and the world's academic community. This is really difficult. The conversation between the mother and daughter had been going on for 3 days. Moira had begun a small-scale lobbying work. Thea was now in her office, sifting through the politicians who could be persuaded with Felicity. The Owl Court was not very helpful in this matter. Their connections in the outside world were limited. If they frequently used assassination and coercion to do things, they would definitely attract too much attention. This was not in line with Thea's initial position of the court. "Miss Quinn, there's a Mr. Jim Gordon outside who wants to see you. He says he knows you." Just as Thea was frowning, her assistant outside the office interrupted her thoughts. "Who? Gordon, the one from Gotham? Why is he looking for me?" Thea asked for his face. It was not someone with the same name. It was indeed old Gordon. After all, they were comrades who had fought together. Thea and Felicity personally went out of the office to welcome him downstairs. "Miss Thea." Old Gordon was travel-worn and his face was extremely pale. However, it was not convenient for him to say too much as there were people coming and going around. He reluctantly greeted her and entered the office with her. Thea waved her hand and asked her assistant to bring the coffee. She invited the old director to sit down. Seeing that he was hesitating, she had no choice but to start a conversation. "How are Uncle Bruce and Barbara?" It would have been better if she did not ask. The moment she asked, the old director's tears fell. "Barbara, she's seriously injured. She can't make it." Chapter 249. Gordon's tears flowed down his cheeks as he talked about Barbara. At first, he was still talking intermittently, but in the end, he could not continue. He took off his glasses and just kept crying. Thea and Felicity looked at each other. Their combined age was not as old as Gordon. As the younger generation, it was not appropriate for them to see the old man so sad, but they did not know how to comfort him. Fortunately, Gordon's mental fortitude was not bad. He forced himself to tell them the reason for his visit. The clown injured her spine. Bruce determined that she can no longer stand up. "I hate myself for being so weak." Gordon waved his fists as he spoke. Fortunately, Thea had just taken over as the CEO, so there were not many things in the room. Otherwise, he would have punched something to vent his anger. "Miss Thea, you're also a high-tech company. Bruce can't do anything, but I want to ask if you have any methods to help Barbara stand up again?" Gordon looked at Thea expectantly, but he was afraid that she would say that she could not wait and completely destroy his hope. What a pitiful parent's heart. It would be a huge problem for others, but for Thea, she could even repair Captain Frigid's genetic chain, and only her spine was injured. With her magic skills, this injury was only a minor injury. However, considering Bruce's hostility towards the supernatural, there was a possibility that she might do something bad with good intentions. However, Thea could not be so heartless as to push the sobbing Gordon out to save her own skin. "Sir, I've come up with 3 ideas. I'll tell you and you can think about it." In order to appear mature, Thea usually wore a pair of flat glasses. At this moment, she took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. F***CK. 3 ideas. Gordon's heart almost jumped out of his chest. "You came up with 3 ideas in less than a minute?" He was in a daze for a moment, from great sadness to great joy. The first method is to connect the nerves together with mechanical assistance. I didn't see Barbara's wound, but the Quinn Corporation has the technology. We can make a metal belt that bypasses the wound and connects the upper and lower nerves. She can walk on her own, but I'm afraid she won't be able to fight anymore, Thea said after seeing that the old director had calmed down a little. Chief Gordon thought about it seriously. Being able to walk was much better than sitting in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. However, he was still worried that Thea might not be able to accept it. He nodded solemnly, indicating that he would consider it, and waited for Thea to continue. The second method is to use nanomachines. These nanomachines will reside in the body and connect to the nerves through computer control. After a period of recovery and training, they can return to their original level. However, the electromagnetic pulse bomb will cause fatal damage to the nanomachines. You have to be careful. Before Gordon Sr. could answer, Felicity whispered, "Do we have the technology?" Thea nodded blankly. She thought to herself, what do we have? This is the technology of the future Atom Man. In the original timeline, Felicity was also paralyzed due to a gunshot wound. Her symptoms were similar to Barbara's, and she recovered with the help of the Atom Man's nanomachines. Although the Atom Man was a joker, the technology he gave was really high-end. With Thea's current knowledge structure, she couldn't understand a lot of it. To fully understand it, she would need at least a PhD. However, the nanomachines were very basic, and it could enter the treatment stage with a little clinical experimentation. However, the technology that she thought was not worth mentioning was hope in Gordon Sr.'s eyes. This was a great idea. The old director could also accept the electromagnetic pulse bomb. No matter how high-end Gotham was, no one would throw it out every day, right? This is not a problem at all. No matter how expensive it is, I can pay for it. Please help me. The old director finally had a smile on his face. He had indeed gained something by risking his reputation to come to Star City. However, he still wanted to hear Thea's final idea. What if it was better? Listening to it wouldn't take much time. You have another idea? Thea sighed and a ball of light appeared in her hand. She had explained her magic to Felicity a few days ago, and it could be considered as an annotation for the temple. She also used her magic to fly the girl up into the sky. Felicity vomited a lot and complained to Thea. Now that she exposed it in front of Gordon, it was also an early precaution. Unless she didn't use her magic for the rest of her life, she would be discovered sooner or later. Now that he was asking for her help, she could use it to make a good impression. The power of magic can restore her to normal, but the price is to accelerate the growth of the cells in her body, and her lifespan will be reduced by 5 to 10 years. In fact, she was talking nonsense. Although she didn't have as strong magic as on the Wave Rider, it was still easy to draw a simple restoration circle. In order to make it seem that it was not easy, she made the consequences extremely serious. Anyway, lifespan was something that couldn't be seen or touched, and no one knew how much it would cost. It had to be said that the director, who had been fighting on the front line all year round, was far more receptive to superpowers than Moira and the others. He didn't ask where the power came from and began to pace in the room, thinking. Thea didn't rush him either. In fact, it was basically a matter of a finger, and she was very confident in this matter. The magic circle was for outsiders to see, and it was easier to make it mysterious and complicated so that she could ask for benefits. Originally, she was still thinking about where to find a spendthrift to be the vanguard of the temple demolition, but now the candidate had automatically jumped out. Gordon was very suitable in all aspects. He was popular and had a high social status, so it seemed to be reasonable that he converted to religion at an old age. Presumably, for the sake of his daughter, he would hesitate to demolish the Statue of Liberty. But for the sake of demolishing a temple in Turkey, the old man would have no psychological barriers at all. But now, she couldn't make it so clear as if she was negotiating a deal. As long as she showed a troubled expression, the old director would definitely understand the meaning behind it. Director Gordon was now deep in thought. It was really a case of one wave after another. His thoughts rolled over and over again, and he couldn't make up his mind for a while. Can I discuss it with Bruce? Also, I have to consider Barbara's opinion. The director found that every choice was not easy. When there was no other way, an idea would be a lifesaver, but now that there were so many options, it was a little difficult to choose. Of course, can you connect to the Batcave? Thea asked her friend after answering the director's first question. Who am I? I'm a world-class hacker. Felicity was a little proud. She took the keyboard and started typing away. In less than 3 minutes, Bruce's figure appeared on the LCD screen in Thea's CEO's office. Batman, who had always been elusive, was shocked when he suddenly saw the screen light up. From where Thea and the others were standing, he was hitting a sandbag alone. Chapter 250. Although there was a hint of panic in the corner of Batman's eyes, he quickly regained his composure. He glanced at the 3 people who appeared on the screen and greeted them calmly. Miss Thea. Miss Felicity. Why did you hack my system? The 2 ladies were a little unhappy that they did not see him panic. They moved aside and gave Gordon some space to talk. Mechanical assistance, nanotechnology, magic. Batman knew that Thea had some tricks up her sleeves. Her magic did not exceed his expectations. However, he was still hesitant when faced with 3 choices. When it came to the health of his loved ones, he would not use his own values to judge it. If Alfred was fatally injured, he would do everything in his power to save him. Although Barbara was not as important as the old butler in his heart, she was still his family. Moreover, Barbara was dragged into this because of his fight with the Joker. Batman felt guilty for causing Gordon Sr. to suffer such a serious injury at such an old age. However, in his mind, the nanotechnology solution was the best. His thoughts were similar to Gordon Sr. How could there be so many electromagnetic pulse bombs? If all the gangs had electromagnetic pulse bombs, half of his technological equipment would be crippled. He would not be able to survive. How about this? Let's ask Barbara for her opinion. I'll go find her now. Batman cut off the signal. His computer skills were not bad. Thea and the others did not hide anything from him. Soon, they found the Batcave where Thea and the others were connected to at the Quinn Group's headquarters in Star City. However, Batman could not find any loopholes in his system even after checking for a long time. The system that he worked so hard to create was easily broken by Felicity. This made him a little speechless. I'll take a closer look when I come back, he said as he went out to pick up Barbara. Why did he cut off the signal? Can't he pay for the electricity in the Batcave? Thea and Felicity were puzzled. He's just like that. You'll get used to it. Gordon knew Batman very well. He explained awkwardly. The few of them could only wait. Thea arranged for her assistant to transfer a helicopter. If there were no accidents, they would have to make a trip to Gotham. Her spellbook did not have any teleportation magic. In the future, Steel Bones could teleport because of the Mother Box technology in Apocalypse. Spatial knowledge was profound and complicated, and it was not something she could get involved in now. In less than half an hour, the monitor in the room lit up again. Needless to say, it was Batman who hacked in. Thea mouthed to Felicity, which meant to tell her to quickly upgrade the corporation system. What did this mean? This meant working overtime. Felicity was full of resentment at Batman on the screen. Barbara, who appeared before the 2 girls, was extremely haggard. The beautiful red-haired girl from before seemed to have completely withered, and she looked listless. When she saw Thea and Anna on the screen, she hurriedly turned her head away, not wanting them to see her in such a sorry state. Why did he still look like this? They looked at Batman in confusion. I didn't tell her your methods. She needs to make her own judgment. Sure enough, when she heard the method, Barbara's eyes lit up instantly. She bit her lip and looked at the people on the screen in disbelief. Thea was now playing the role of a doctor. She could only explain her methods again, not leaving out the pros and cons, and let Barbara choose for herself. Ah! Barbara covered her mouth in agitation. She was already at the lowest point of her life, and she would try her best to hold on to any hope. She would accept any one of the 3 solutions, let alone any of them. However, at the crossroads of life, everyone would be confused by their choices. She did not know which method to choose at that moment. She looked at Gordon and Batman as if asking for help. It's up to you. We support your decision. The 2 important people had expressed their opinions. You can choose whichever one you want. I choose the magic method. Barbara glanced at Batman from the corner of her eye. She had always been clear about her teacher's point of view, but she just wanted to be as good as new. What was the point of adding a robot into her body? As for losing a few years of her life, she was just 20 years old. She really did not care. She did not think that she could live to the day she died of old age. Batman nodded and did not express his opinion. He said to the screen,
Then I'll have to trouble Miss Thea to come over.
I'll prepare the materials you need. Okay, we'll talk about the details when we meet. Thea said and hung up. She could not help but sigh. A bullet had turned a young girl into this. This was the helplessness of ordinary people. Although Thea's body was far inferior to Diana's, she was already immune to handgun bullets after being modified by divine power. Rifle bullets could only scratch her skin. If it was not a powerful attack that could kill her in one shot, she could use her divine power to recover. She instructed Thea to look after the house and upgrade the corporation's system. In the future, as Thea's movements became bigger and bigger, she would attract more and more attention. She did not want her house to be visited by hackers every few days. The journey to Gotham was smooth. The battle half a year ago had left the Gotham Mafia in a state of shock. Under Gordon's guidance, Thea landed the plane by the shore and the two walked into the famous Bat Cave. The last time Thea came here, the Bat Cave was destroyed by Bane. She did not know if this place was new or old. The eerie and terrifying environment was very Gotham. It was comparable to a haunted house. With the help of the Eye of Horus, Thea roughly scanned the area and found 3 secret rooms. She wondered how much of the famous Project Babel was written. Miss Thea, remember my words.
Don't mention Dick in front of Barbara.
Thea, who was wearing a pair of high heels, felt uncomfortable walking in the deep and shallow cave. The old director seemed to remember something and quickly reminded her. I know, don't worry. On the way, Thea had a rough understanding of the situation after they parted ways. The first Robin, Dick Grantham, had left Batman and walked on his own path. He changed his name to Nightwing and broke up with Barbara peacefully. He was no longer in Gotham. Batman could only look for a new assistant. He chose the burly Jason Todd to be the second Robin. After Barbara suffered a heavy emotional blow and suffered a heavy physical injury, Batman had to find another place to train Jason Todd. He was afraid that she would think badly of him. Yo, Uncle Bruce, you look good. When Thea entered the house, she saw Batman writing code with a gloomy face. Of course, it was not because he wanted to become a coder. It was all because of Felicity. Bruce nodded. I'll take you to see Barbara first. I just injected her with a tranquilizer. Her mind is very unstable. He immediately led the two of them to the inner room. Chapter 251. Barbara, who had been injected with a sedative, was lying quietly on the medical chair. Although Batman did not know the rhythm of her treatment, he still passed a pile of medical reports to Thea. Thea glanced at the reports that were as thick as a book in Batman's hands. She took out 2 X-rays and waved her hand to indicate that she did not need to look at the rest. How long would it take for her to finish looking at this pile of reports? She was planning to go home for dinner later. By the time she finished looking at all of them, it would be tomorrow morning, right? Do you have X-ray eyes like Superman's? Batman saw that she was looking at the X-rays while staring at Barbara intently. She was not rolling over, and there were several layers of clothes between them. What could she see? He held it in and finally asked. I'm far inferior to him. Actually, the difference between the two was not that big, but Thea still described her abilities as inferior in all aspects. Old Gordon did not care about X-ray eyes at all. He would use any means to save his daughter. He roughly pushed Batman aside and said, Thea, do you think Barbara's injuries can be cured? Batman knew that his old buddy was angry with him, but what could he do? He could not pin Gordon to the ground and beat him up, so he could only stand by and watch silently with a bitter smile. Thea carefully examined Barbara's injuries. They were not serious. With the current level of technology, this would definitely be a life-ending injury. But for a magic user, especially Thea who had many light-type spells, it was a matter of minutes. However, she could not cure it so easily. The more precious something was, the more complicated it was to obtain it. If she did it too quickly, they would think, it's that simple. Let me treat you to a meal as repayment. It's too dark here? My spells require a lot of light-type energy, and the effect will be very poor here. Can we go out and treat her? Thea pretended to check and turned to the two of them. She was afraid that they would not believe her and casually summoned a ball of light. This was not an act. They were deep underground, and the absorption of light-type elements was greatly affected. Then let's go to my old house. We can go up directly from here. It was a very normal request. Batman was a little disappointed that he couldn't use the high-tech equipment in the Batcave to record Thea's spellcasting process, but he still led her to the elevator with a calm expression. Gordon Sr. followed them with his unconscious daughter. The four of them took the elevator and walked through the dark cave. Not long after, Batman opened a secret door, revealing a luxurious room. "Welcome to the Wayne family, Miss Thea. This is my butler, Alfred Pennyworth," Batman introduced to Thea, pointing at the old butler who had rushed over after hearing the commotion. Thea also admired this loyal old butler. After exchanging a few pleasantries with him, they didn't waste any time and went to an outdoor lawn in Wayne's house. There was plenty of sunlight here. Thea looked around and motioned for them to wait at the side. She began to draw a recovery magic circle. She was using the celestial spells from the unicorn's memory. Even if Batman later asked Zatanna about this magic circle, he wouldn't be able to get anything out of it because they were not of the same system. Besides, Thea didn't think that Batman would have the habit of discussing magic with Zatanna, his childhood sweetheart. After drawing for a full half an hour, a sacred and ethereal pattern appeared on the lawn of Wayne's house. The old butler felt a little sorry for their lawn. He had taken care of these flowers and plants for so many years, but now they were torn apart by Thea's scribbles. It made him very sad, but when he saw Chief Gordon's pale face, he held back and said nothing. Thea squeezed out a few drops of sweat and pretended to be very tired. "Come on, let Barbara in." "Forget it. You will destroy my magic circle." "I'll do it myself." Wrapping the unconscious Barbara with magic, she floated on the ground and landed directly in the center of the magic circle. This small display of his skills also strengthened the confidence of these people. The casting process could be completed in a minute, but Thea deliberately prolonged the process. All kinds of chanting, hand gestures, and circling around the magic circle took an hour before she stopped. "It's almost done. The rest of the magic will operate automatically." Thea was busy for a long time. She sat on the side and took out her mobile phone to write a text message to Moira, indicating that she had found a fool and asked her to call to cooperate with her act. Although the mother and daughter didn't communicate in advance, Moira understood very well. Soon, she called directly. At first, the two talked in a low voice, but their voices became louder and louder. Finally, Moira's sobs came from the phone. Thea hung up the phone. Gordon and the others looked at each other, not knowing what to do. "Miss Thea, are you in some kind of trouble? Is there anything I can do to help?" Old Gordon didn't know if his daughter's injury had healed. Looking at Barbara, who was surrounded by azure magic in the magic circle, he was afraid that Thea would have a problem. Of course, Thea couldn't answer every question. She pretended to decline several times to show that she was fine. However, Director Gordon felt that he owed her a great favor. After repeated questioning, Thea could only package her ability with the Temple of Artemis. Temple of Artemis?
Batman, old Gordon, and the old butler, the three of them added up to more than 150 years old, were all shocked by the sudden change in the topic. When they heard that it was an ability blessed by the gods, they felt that it could explain the fact that Thea suddenly knew magic. "Does Mrs. Quinn mean that she doesn't want you to do it yourself?" After old Gordon got a definite answer, he secretly calculated in his heart. In the end, he felt that he owed her too much. If he didn't return the favor, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to sleep well. Plus, this matter would only cause some criticism, but it wouldn't be to the point of risking his life. There was no danger, so he would take it on himself. "This matter, I think."
Before Director Gordon could finish his words, he was interrupted by Batman. "Let me handle this matter." Gordon felt that he owed Thea a favor, but Bruce Wayne owed even more. Not only did he owe Thea a favor, but he also owed Gordon and his daughter. If the old director could think of the criticism it would cause, with his IQ, he could also think of it. The old director was about to retire. If he were to take on such a matter before his retirement, it would more or less be a stain on his good reputation. It didn't matter to him. The name Bruce Wayne was basically linked to a bad reputation. Now that he had entered the Gotham police force, it was more or less better. However, the number of media outlets in the world that hadn't scolded him could be counted on one hand. He had enough social reputation, and his skin was thick enough. It was just right for him to do this. He asked Thea in a low voice for some details. Thea pretended to be embarrassed, but Batman was very determined. Compared to her helping them, this matter was insignificant. "Don't worry, leave it to me." Thea declined several times, but finally accepted the plan under the persuasion of the others. Chapter 252. Now that she had achieved her goal, Sia sped up the healing process and finally finished the treatment half an hour later. Why isn't Babla awake yet? Did it fail? Gordon Sr. asked anxiously when he saw that Babla was still the same. Thea was also a little puzzled and looked carefully. Bruce injected a little too much sedatives into her body. So, the few of them were a little dumbfounded. After a while, they finally woke Babla up. Gordon Sr. first asked his daughter how she was feeling. Babla was dizzy and it took a while for her to understand that the treatment was over. She touched her back in disbelief. I think I can feel it. The old director helped her walk a few shaky steps. The first few steps were thrilling, but the later they became more and more steady. Seeing that they had helped her take the lead, Sia watched them for another hour with a smile on her face. Thank you, thank you. When Babla realized that she had completely returned to normal, she gave Sia a big hug, but then she felt that she had neglected everyone else. She only stopped when she reported everyone present, including everyone else. Gordon Sr., who was in tears, asked Thea to stay when he heard that she was leaving. He only stopped when he sent her to the tarmac at the back of the mountain. He was so grateful that he might even blow up the White House, let alone build a temple in Turkey. Thea had just started the plane and it was very noisy. When she saw the old director waving at her, she thought that he was sending her off and didn't care. However, when she saw him waving his hands and sweating, she realized that something had happened. She stopped the plane and asked, "What's wrong?" Bruce called and asked us to hurry back. He's in the Batcave and it's urgent. Gordon Sr. put down his phone and shouted at her. Did something happen to Babla again? That shouldn't be. She could only rush back to the Batcave with Gordon Sr. this time. They didn't have time to walk slowly. Gordon was so anxious that he was about to run. Thea couldn't walk fast in her high heels and short skirt. She could only wrap her body with magic and follow him into the cave. After entering the cave, the two of them discovered that Babla was completely fine. She was continuously punching and kicking to recover her body's condition. Batman suddenly had a 1.8 tall and 200 kilograms strong man beside him. He didn't have time to introduce him to Thea. Batman pondered for a few seconds before saying, "Miss Thea, I didn't want to trouble you anymore, but this matter still involves you." Then, he turned on the monitor in the room. This is the citywide broadcast from 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes ago? Thea knew that Batman was a very resolute person. If he said that it was related to her, then it was most likely related to her. She would just have to wait and see. The snowflakes on the screen lasted for less than 30 seconds, and a figure that was expected appeared on the screen. Ha, 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 ha. Smelly Bat. Did you receive my gift? I heard that the red-haired beauty is your assistant?
His face was deathly pale, and the large dark circles under his eyes exuded a sense of madness. However, the most eye-catching thing about him was his scarlet lips and the large gaps on both sides of his mouth. This person was too famous. Batman's nemesis. The Joker. Thea only remembered that the Joker was locked up by Batman. She didn't expect him to escape so quickly. He almost defeated Barbara in one blow. Thea couldn't help but look at Barbara. The red-haired beauty was trembling all over. She couldn't tell if it was from anger or fear, but it was probably a combination of both. The Joker on the screen took out a small knife from his dark purple suit. He ran his fingers through his yellow hair and flashed a smile that he thought was very elegant. However, his smile didn't look happy at all. I know you've been looking for me like crazy. What do you want? Do you want revenge? You're crazy. Haha. The Joker on the screen roared at the camera. Thea saw from the corner of her eye that Batman was staring at the screen as if he didn't hear a thing.
I spent a lot of effort to find a person who is very important to the Smelly Bat. Ladies and gentlemen in front of the television, let me formally introduce this distinguished guest to you. What? You're asking for his name. I really don't know his name. Maybe he'll say it himself? The Joker pretended in front of the camera. Then, he suddenly pulled a chair from the side of the screen. A young man was tied to the chair. The Joker tore off the tape around the young man's mouth. The knife in his hand kept moving around the young man's face. Ha, ha. Can you tell everyone your name in front of the audience? Seeing this, Thea's feelings could only be expressed with one word, F***CK. The Joker kidnapped Damian Wayne. If she remembered correctly, Talia had entrusted her son to the ninja master. The Joker, who was just an ordinary person, went to Nanderbart and kidnapped Damien under the noses of a group of bandits, assassins, and ninja masters. One must know that Sia was now planning to become a ninja master as a long-term goal, but this guy actually snuck in alone, and the worst thing was that he succeeded. On the screen, Damian Wayne's mental fortitude was not bad. My grandfather is a ninja master. You lunatic, let me go. The 6-year-old Damian also knew that Batman's identity could not be revealed. He was just using this situation to show his dissatisfaction and at the same time, to send a signal to the ninja masters outside. The Joker laughed and pushed Damian aside. Thea felt that the Joker might know Batman's true identity. Everything was just a game to him. A game where victory and defeat did not matter. Damian's little tricks were not worth mentioning in his eyes. Cut the screen. The Joker turned his head and ordered one of his men. The screen was dark, but soon, a series of photos appeared. Even though they were blurry, they could still see a red figure flying in the air. F***CK. Thea finally knew why Batman called her back. Wasn't that her on the screen? This should be the day when she blew up the Arkham gas pipeline and lured Solomon Grundy away. There were not many photos. The Joker quickly returned to the middle of the screen. This guy is the Smelly Bat's new partner. He seems to be related to the Smelly Bat in some way. In order to track him down, I spent a lot of time and finally, I found him. Thea's heart skipped a beat. This guy found out about her identity? Did he go to Star City to commit a crime? Malcolm was a big villain. It was unlikely that he would be caught, and it was even more unlikely for Diana. Could it be Moira or Felicity? I found his sister. This brave boy's mother. The great love of a mother. She risked her life for her son. This mother very politely agreed to be my guest. Smelly Bat, you must hurry and save him. Ha, ha, ha. The Joker finished and the screen went completely black. My sister? Who? Thea was a little dizzy. I only have 2 brothers. Who is this sister? She thought about it. A memory not too long ago surfaced in her mind. This guy caught Talia. Chapter 253. Thea's admiration for this person could only be described as a torrential river. Not only did this guy snatch the ninja master's grandson, but he also kidnapped his daughter. He was probably the only one who could fully express the meaning of the word, courting death. As an ordinary person with no special abilities, no technological equipment, and no combat training, he was the only one who dared to offend a ninja master to such an extent. Talia, Damian, and Thea had nothing to do with him. She could ignore him and go home for dinner, but Batman had just agreed to take the blame for her, so it was not appropriate for her to just leave. Furthermore, the clown had already noticed her. If she did not get rid of him, who knew if Star City would be implicated? Thea did not care about these so-called high IQ criminals. If one magic couldn't get rid of them, she would use 2. Both sides had different worldviews, so how could they fight? What's your plan? Thea looked at Batman seriously. His wife and child were kidnapped, and Barbara was seriously injured. If he said that he did not have any ideas, then he was not a man. Let's split up. Did you bring your equipment? Batman suddenly realized that Thea's business suit and high heels did not seem suitable for combat. Thea took out a travel bag from her space ring and gestured to him. The few who had seen her magic were fine, but the future Red Hood and current second-generation Robin, Jason Todd, was shocked. He rubbed his eyes and could not see where such a big bump came from. The clown seems to have imprisoned the 2 of them separately. We each go in one direction and quickly save them. According to my judgment, he should be in this chemical plant. I'll go there. Batman pointed at a certain spot on the map. You can leave this factory to me. Okay. After saying that, Sia went to change her clothes with Babla. With her physical fitness, she could wear the combat suit or not, but ordinary clothes were not very convenient in battle. Moreover, after being shot, the clothes would be full of holes, and it was easy to expose her body. Wait. Jason Todd shouted to stop them. Mr. Bruce, what about me? It's not that I don't trust this lady, I just think she needs some help. You haven't finished your training yet. Bruce had already changed into the batsuit. His voice was low and magnetic. Bang, bang. 2 gunshots were heard. Jason Todd shouted in dissatisfaction, my marksmanship is good enough for all the missions. Guns are toys for the weak. Batman recited a famous quote from his father-in-law, the Ninja Master. Unfortunately, Jason Todd didn't listen at all. Batman was also having a headache. This second-generation Robin was too subjective. He simply couldn't listen to any advice.
Helpless, he could only use his fists and feet to persuade him.
It's normal that I can't beat you. But I don't believe that this woman is stronger than me. Jason Todd, whose face was bruised and swollen, was even more displeased. His pride could not accept being beaten up in front of so many people. Oh, so what if she's a woman? Do you want to see the power of a woman?
Originally, their domestic violence had nothing to do with Thea, but Jason Todd's mention of a woman reminded Thea of Diana, who was very dissatisfied with the discrimination between men and women.
Anger rose in her heart. Jason Todd's silence made his attitude clear. Thea could only send a message to Batman, "Don't blame me." This was his provocative look. Batman's eyes twitched a little. He shook his head gently, meaning that it was enough to teach him a lesson, but not cripple him. Humph. Thea stood 10 meters away. She stretched out her right hand and aimed at Jason Todd. In the latter's confused eyes, her magic burst out. The air was like a muffled thunder. Jason Todd's burly body seemed to have been hit by a heavy hammer. His feet left the ground and he flew 5 or 6 meters away. If Jason Todd had been prepared, he would not have been so weak. However, he had not seen Thea's various tricks. Now that he was caught off guard, he fell to the ground with a thud. The Batcave was a cave. Master Bruce had made a lot of technological equipment, but the floor was not paved. The ground was uneven. This fall was very solid. Barbara had long been dissatisfied with this blockhead. In her heart, only one person was worthy of the title of Robin. This rough guy was nothing. Now that she saw him in such a bad luck, she almost laughed out loud. Jason Todd's 200-pound muscles were not just for show. His physique was also at the peak of an ordinary person. This blow could make an ordinary person lie down for a day, but to him, it was only to the extent of dizziness. He rubbed his head and got up, shouting, "This is witchcraft. I don't accept it. You dare to compete with me in marksmanship? Sure. Let's have a civilized competition. It won't hurt the harmony." Thea had an idea and remembered a passage from a novel. Civilized competition? What was that? Jason Todd was not the only one who did not understand.
Everyone in the room had never seen a civilized competition before.
You shoot at me first. If you can hit me, you win. Then I'll shoot you. Do you dare? Thea said scornfully. I won't be responsible if something happens to you. Jason Todd raised his gun and aimed at Thea. He said with uncertainty. Thea did not say anything. She hooked her finger and signaled him to shoot. Jason Todd could now see that she was not an ordinary person. However, he did not aim at her fatal spots. Instead, he aimed at her limbs and fired continuously. He only looked at Thea when he ran out of bullets. Of course, Thea would not stand still and take the bullets. She was still far from having a body of steel. Now that she had obtained half of Ares's divinity, her dynamic vision was far better than when she was on Paradise Island. When she was facing the German soldiers, all the traces of bullets could not be hidden from her eyes. She picked up all the bullets with ease and looked at Jason Todd with a smile on her face. She opened her palm and revealed the bullets in her palm. Unfortunately, I didn't hit you. Is it my turn now? What the hell? Jason Todd was completely dumbfounded. He checked his gun again. That's right, it was his gun. It was not a fake gun. But how was this possible? Seeing Thea smiling as she took the gun from Barbara, he regretted it. He did not have the ability to catch bullets. No matter how many muscles he had, he could not block bullets. However, he would not admit defeat. With his personality, he could only grit his teeth and prepare to fight. All right, Barbara, take Thea to change her clothes. Let's get going. Batman saw Thea slowly raise her gun. He knew that she would not kill her new assistant. Although he wanted to teach Jason Todd a lesson, he felt that his wife and child were more important. He told her to stop fooling around. They still had business to attend to. Chapter 254. The process of changing was very fast. Other than preventing exposure during a firefight, it was also used to cover her face. With Thea's current physical strength, She could fully unleash the skateboard's maximum speed of 400 kilometers per hour without any anti-compression equipment. The skateboard that had once tortured Aries with its speed could no longer keep up with her strengthening speed. She urgently needed faster and stronger technological equipment. After asking for the location of the target, she took the communicator that Babla handed to her and split up with Batman in the Batfighter. Babla, whose computer skills were quite good, was now in the Batcave, relaying various information for them. As for Jason Todd, even if he was magnanimous, it would still take him a few days to recover from today's psychological trauma. Thea, Batman has already started fighting. Thea had just finished observing the battlefield when Babla had already sent her the real-time situation on the other side. That's quite urgent, Thea muttered softly. Batman was not as indifferent to this relationship as he appeared to be towards Talia and her son. The two of them arrived at the target location around the same time. Thea's Eye of Horus had just roughly scanned the area when he had already rushed in. Rushing in without even a basic investigation was definitely not the fighting quality of someone who had dominated Gotham for many years. Back then, they had agreed to attack at the same time. Thea did not find any heavy weapons inside. She put away the skateboard and blasted open the metal door with an arrow before rushing in. Against these modern criminals with guns, Thea did not use any magic or the Chosen's talent. She only used the magic arrow that came with the divine bow. She activated the Eye of Horus and shot one person regardless of distance and distance. From the time she entered the mechanical processing factory, 7 to 8 criminals had fallen under her arrows in just 2 minutes. The factory had been abandoned for many years and was very messy. Piercing through too many objects would greatly reduce the visual range of the Eye of Horus. Thea took a full 5 minutes to find her target. Babla, tell Batman that my target is his son. Roger. The clown's subordinates shared the same characteristic as him. They were all crazy. Sia didn't hold back at all. She killed everyone she saw. Her deterrence didn't work at all. These people acted as if they didn't see her. They all hid in corners and fired crazily. Rockets and grenades were fired from time to time. These people didn't even think about the serious problem of whether such a powerful weapon would bury everyone indoors. As expected, mental patients were the most terrifying. Thea shook her head and shot another 2 men with rocket launchers to death. Hey, this kid is quite spirited. Why are you glaring at me? Damian Wayne wasn't hard to find, or rather, these lunatics didn't plan on hiding him. Thea found Batman's son in a room full of junk. Seeing that there was still tape on his mouth, she tore it off for him. Idiot, there's a sneak attack. Kid scolded as soon as he opened his mouth, but he still reminded Thea. Thea had already discovered the person behind her with her psychic power. She was only afraid that the other party would take Damian as a hostage, so she deliberately exposed her weakness. On one hand, she wanted to lure the other party into a sneak attack, and on the other hand, she wanted to create an opportunity for herself to approach Damian. Now, facing the enemy's flying kick, she twisted her body and used her left hand to block the opponent's attack. When the opponent's body was in mid-air and full of openings, she clenched her right hand into a fist and punched the opponent's lower abdomen. Boom! Although she didn't bring her mechanical arm, Thea's current physical strength was no weaker than Bane's when he drank the poison. Her punch sent the opponent flying straight to the wall, creating a big hole in the wall. He flew 5 or 6 meters before landing on the ground. Just as she was about to untie Damian, Thea felt that something was wrong. She scanned with her psychic power and found that the enemy who was sent flying by her punch was still alive. Did the clown have such a strong subordinate? However, when she saw the other party slowly climb up from the pile of trash, her signature red and blue coat, and her beautiful figure, Thea realized that this wasn't just a bunch of small fries. There was actually a famous person hiding here. This person with a slightly crazed expression and a large baseball bat in her hand was the clown girl. However, this person was still able to stand up shakily after taking a direct hit from her. She was only wearing a dirty tank top, and there was no armor or clothes on her lower abdomen. There was only the mark of her own fist. This was definitely not a normal person's physique. Was she injected with some kind of enhancer? Interesting. It would have been troublesome to deal with this person when she first arrived in Gotham, but now, You're Talia's sister? You're much stronger than her. Although the clown girl stood up, the feeling of being punched was not pleasant. She felt that her intestines were about to break, and she was only holding on for now. She's not my mother's sister. She's an imposter. Before Thea could say anything, The naughty child beside her started to strongly disagree. 3 black lines appeared on Thea's forehead. What do you think you're doing? Imposter. I wouldn't even bother to impersonate Talia's sister, Nissa. As expected, naughty children are the most annoying. If it wasn't for Batman, I would have beaten the *T out of you. Depressed, Thea was too lazy to explain that there was a beautiful misunderstanding. In fact, she welcomed this kind of misunderstanding. Clown duo, if you have any grievances in the future, you can go to the Ninja Master. Of course, it would be even better if you misunderstood that I'm Darkseid's relative. It would be nice to think about how the clown blasted the Apocalypse Star into space dust. Cut the crap. Come here. Thea nimbly cast Magician's hand and dragged the clown girl to her front. The clown girl was trying to say more while waiting for her body to recover. Unfortunately, Thea observed the clown girl closely. Although the clown girl's face was painted red and blue, making her look like a monster from afar, she was actually quite good-looking. Her body was exactly what all men in this era dreamed of. How could she be a lunatic? The naughty child, Damien, was completely silent. He no longer dared to make a fuss about the imposter. From his point of view, he only saw Sia waving her hand, and the clown girl appeared in front of them with her feet off the ground. It was as if there was a pair of invisible big hands in the air that were strangling her neck. This scene still had a lot of impact on Damien, who was only 6 years old despite his maturing mind. He looked at Thea's face from the corner of his eye. Is she really here to save me? She can't be Father's enemy, can she? Even though he told himself to stay calm, his legs still felt weak. Damn it, what kind of eyes are you looking at? The clown girl was almost suffocating. She was not afraid of death, but Thea's look of looking at her as if she was some kind of rare animal made her angry. She pulled out her revolver and aimed at Thea's head. She can still move? This was a little out of Thea's expectations. She reached out 2 fingers and caught the bullet. Under the clown girl's horrified gaze, she also took the revolver from her. She held it in her hand and gestured a few times. The gun felt really good, but unfortunately, Thea had no love for it. Chapter 255. The gun was a good gun with excellent performance in all aspects. As for people, Thea kept looking at the clown girl. Should she strangle her or shoot her? Forget it, she's a woman after all. Why should a woman make things difficult for another woman? Let's see if there's any chance of saving her. Thea withdrew the idea of killing the clown girl and silently used her mental power to try to brainwash her again. However, the magic that worked every time encountered a setback for the first time. The clown girl actually resisted her mental invasion. This was something new. Thea increased the output of her magical power again. Initially, her magical power entered smoothly, but it was soon attacked by a strong mental wave. Both sides fought to a draw. In the end, Thea was afraid that the strong mental wave would burn the clown girl's brain, so she unilaterally withdrew her magical power. This B*TCH could actually resist the mental magic with her crazy willpower. It was Thea's first time seeing something so non-magical. She was even more curious. However, looking at the clown girl's pained face, it must have been a huge burden for her when the 2 forces fought in her mind. If she could resist it, wouldn't the clown's mental resistance be even stronger? I'll spare your life today. When I have time in the future, I'll find a few mental patients in Star City and study them. Thea turned the gun and knocked the clown girl unconscious with the butt of the gun. She untied Damien and threw the clown girl's gun to him for self-defense. Thea contacted the Bat Cave. Babla, the child has been rescued. How's Batman? Do you need my support? Before Babla could say anything, Batman's voice came from the communication device. You go back first, I'll be right there. She could hear that the battle on Batman's side was not over yet. The sound of gunshots and his fists hitting the clown girl's face could be heard continuously. The arrogant Batman. Since he said that he didn't need support, then forget it. His relationship with the clown was too complicated. It was better for outsiders not to get involved. After placing the clown girl behind the skateboard, Thea asked Damien, Kid, are you afraid of heights? You. How dare you look down on me? My grandfather is a ninja master. Although Damien was in awe of her strange abilities, he still grumbled unhappily. Okay, I got it. Come up and stand still. Don't move. Thea interrupted his bragging and placed him in front of her. What's so great about that?
If it wasn't for the fact that the ninja master was backed by the 3 palace demons, I would have dealt with him a long time ago. Pulling Damien along, he slowly flew out of the mechanical processing plant. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Damien was a little surprised.
Are you really my father's companion? He doesn't kill people.
The corpses on the ground were all killed with a single blow. It could be seen that the person who killed them didn't hesitate at all. Damien, who had already begun training under the ninja master, could see this. However, there were no sharp weapons left on these people's fatal spots. This made the 6-year-old Damien a little puzzled. He didn't know how Thea killed so many people. I'm not his subordinate, and I'm not from Gotham. He can't control me. Thea couldn't be bothered to brag about her bloody experience in Gotham to a child who was only a few years old. Back in Arkham, Batman didn't say anything when she went in and out, and there were corpses everywhere. He probably knew her habits when he asked her to come and save people. Moreover, she didn't kill all of them. There was still a guy with a name behind the skateboard. After leaving the processing plant, Thea added an air shield on Damien's body. It could effectively resist the pressure of flying at high speed. As for the unconscious clown girl behind him, her body seemed to be much stronger than a normal person's, so she didn't have to worry about her. The skateboard was very fast. They flew back to the Batcave in 20 minutes. Knowing that Batman was still cleaning up, Thea handed the clown girl over to Barbara. It was up to them to kill or cut her up in the future. She changed back into her own clothes and used the Batcave's network to handle some work matters remotely. As the CEO of Quinn Group, she had very little free time. Every day, there were a lot of trivial matters bothering her. In order not to disappoint Moira, she could only force herself to deal with them. Fortunately, after being transformed by divine power, her intelligence and wisdom were far superior to that of ordinary people. She took advantage of the time to deal with some work every day, and it didn't drag down her training too much. Although the 6-year-old Damien was precocious, he was still a little nervous when he suddenly ran into a completely unfamiliar environment. He didn't know anyone around him. Barbara was paying attention to Batman's battle situation. When Jason Todd saw Thea coming in, he hid far away. Both of them ignored him. Gordon Sr.'s attitude was very friendly. He didn't care if the child was hungry or thirsty. The way he coaxed the child made Damien a little depressed. When he saw that Thea had changed back into her regular clothes, the Urban Beauty's outfit made him a little stunned. Although he didn't want to admit defeat, he was still a little shocked. This woman was really beautiful. Slowly walking to Thea's side and glancing at the documents on her laptop, Damien pretended to ask casually, "You're also an employee of Wayne Enterprises? You're very motivated." Thea was amused by the naughty child. "I'll say it again. I'm not your father's subordinate. Although my company's market value is not as good as Wayne Enterprises, the gap isn't that big. Not just anyone can hire me." "Do you accept employment?" Damien asked in a low voice. Thea looked away from the office documents. What did this child mean? "You want to hire me? I'm not short of money." Before she could finish her words, she was interrupted by a rush of footsteps. "Thea, come and help take a look." She fell into a sulfuric acid pool. It was Batman's voice. Could it be that something earth-shattering happened to make his voice change? Thea put away her laptop and walked over quickly. "Oh my God." When she walked to Batman's side, she smelled a strong corrosive smell. His bat suit was stained with a lot of unknown chemicals, but he didn't care about himself at all. His eyes were focused on the woman in his arms. Looking at the woman in front of him who was corroded by various chemicals, she didn't even look human anymore. Was this Talia? Thea looked down at Damien who followed her. The child clenched his fists tightly, his little face was extremely tense, and he was trying hard not to cry. Was it really Talia? Thea looked at the woman's face again. The corrosion was too strong, but she could still vaguely see the shadow of the woman who had fought with her for 80 rounds. "Thea, her injuries are very serious. Can you save her life first?" Batman had completely lost his composure. His usual calmness was thrown out of the window. He was constantly injecting various injections into Talia's body, trying to keep her heart beating. "Let me do it." Thea pushed Batman away and operated the Eye of Horus with all her might, constantly looking for all kinds of toxic and harmful substances that were corroding her body. The situation was not optimistic. All kinds of chemicals were madly corroding her body.
If it wasn't for Batman constantly injecting her with various injections, she would have died long ago. Chapter 256. There were many chemicals that had invaded Talia's body. Some were acidic, some were alkaline, some were metallic, and some were non-metallic. Thea wasn't acting this time. She had learned magic power during this period of time and was now quite proficient. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to do such a delicate job. She kept wrapping the toxins in Talia's body with magic power. Because she didn't know how harmful these green things were, she didn't dare to extract them from her pores. Thea directly made a big cut on Talia's arm and squeezed out a large mass of unknown chemicals. Her heartbeat has stabilized. Batman had been staring at several instruments. Now that the chemicals had been extracted, he knew that Talia's life was saved. His efforts weren't in vain. Phew! Thea also breathed a sigh of relief. She was under the most pressure. She had used up a lot of her spirit and divine power, but the magic operation wasn't finished yet. Now Talia's condition had changed from dying to half dead. If Thea didn't do anything, she would basically be in a vegetative state. There were still a lot of chemicals in Talia's body. Many of them had already attached to her internal organs. Thea's knowledge of chemistry was far from enough to identify all the categories. At first, she only extracted all the lethal ones that she knew. She wasn't very sure about the rest. Maybe the two substances would react and kill Talia. Batman was needed here. After learning about Thea's problem, he said that he would be the one to solve it. He didn't need the help of others and ran off to the side to mill and grind the detection equipment. Thea naturally couldn't stay idle. She took out her laptop and connected to the internet to analyze on the spot. When she encountered something she couldn't determine, Batman, the humanoid computer, would ask. She extracted a few more highly harmful chemicals. The rest was really hard to determine. Fortunately, Batman was very fast. She didn't know what he had dismantled. It took him half an hour to make something that looked like a metal rod. Scanning Talia's body, he could collect the trace elements emitted from her body and connect to the main computer in the Batcave to analyze the characteristics and toxicity of the substances. There was no need for Thea to guess blindly like a blind man touching an elephant. It seemed much more reliable. From time to time, Batman had to calculate the ratio of several chemicals to see if they were harmful to the capillaries, the intestines, and the respiratory tract. Sometimes 4 or 5 substances were mixed together, creating a messy relationship that even a genius like Batman couldn't figure out. What he couldn't do, Thea didn't bother to think about it. She just used the hard way. She made a deep cut near those unknown chemical substances and took them out first. Not far away, Damien watched as Thea cut her mother until she was covered in wounds. His heart ached terribly, but he also knew that it was time to save her mother's life. He watched them busying themselves anxiously. Halfway through, Barbara and Jason Todd also joined in to help, bandaging the wounds and cleaning the ground. The entire Batcave smelled very good. A large amount of blood mixed with countless chemicals extracted from Talia's body made Barbara dizzy and cover her nose. Jason Todd was a tough guy, but looking at his wobbly legs, it was obvious that he was forcing himself to hold on. "Are you completely fine?" Batman asked Gordon Sr. to take Damien out first, but after a while, he couldn't hold on any longer. He was too close, and he felt his vision turn black. He knew that he was still affected by the chemicals. In order to keep his mind clear, he took out a gas mask and put it on. Only then did he feel better. But seeing that Thea's face was still normal and there wasn't a drop of blood on her body, he couldn't help but ask. "Ha!" Thea was studying the dark brown substance hovering near Talia's kidney. Hearing his question, she answered without thinking, "This smell doesn't affect me." Batman nodded, indicating that he understood. "Isn't it just super endurance? You're not the first person with this ability, so it's not rare. I'll note it down later." Thea didn't know that in Batman's little black notebook, there was a note about her super endurance right after her X-ray vision. After helping for half an hour, Barbara felt that she had done her best. She didn't have anything to do with Talia at all. Using the excuse that her injuries hadn't healed, she went home to sleep. This day's experience was really legendary for her. She came to the Batcave lying down, and now she could walk back as if nothing had happened. She needed to go home and think carefully about whether today was a dream. Jason Todd was a real man. Seeing that Thea was fine, he didn't wear a gas mask because he didn't want to admit defeat. Unlike Batman, He wasn't in close contact and could walk to the entrance of the cave to get some fresh air from time to time. Finally, he lasted an hour longer than Barbara and finally went back to rest. Halfway through, Thea called Star City. Talia's injuries were very complicated, and she wouldn't be able to go home for dinner. Batman politely said that he would be the host and treat her to a meal. Thea waved her hand, indicating that they should save the person in front of them from the gates of hell first. The two worked together for an entire night. Catwoman, who hadn't shown up for a day, greeted Thea and found that they were treating Talia. Although she was a little jealous, she didn't say anything when she saw that Talia's face was disfigured and she almost didn't look like a human anymore. After staying in the room for a while, she also felt that the smell was too inhuman, so she left. Finally, when the sun was about to rise, the two finished treating Talia. Using Batman's self-made scanning device twice, all the toxic and harmful substances in Talia's body were removed. However, the chemical substances lingering in her body for a long time still caused a devastating impact on her health. All of Talia's organs were severely damaged. She couldn't even move normally, let alone recover. Miss Thea, the follow-up treatment. Batman was a little speechless. He already owed her a favor by treating Barbara. Now that he hadn't returned the old favor, how could he ask for a new one? He was already very grateful that Thea had helped him for an entire night. However, when he saw Talia's condition, he remembered the passionate woman from before. His heart ached as if it was being stabbed by a knife. In the end, he went against his principles and shamelessly asked for help. It seemed that Catwoman's task of changing her name from Selina Kyle to Selina Wayne was a little difficult. Who said that Batman didn't have feelings for Talia? Thea sighed. After all, her friendship with Catwoman was deeper. However, she couldn't reject Batman's request. Actually, the best way to treat Talia is Ninja Master's Lazarus Pool. Chapter 257. The Pool of Lazarus? Batman's eyes lit up instantly, but he seemed to have thought of something and went silent again. No, Ninja Master said that the pool is connected to the devil's territory, and the souls of those who soak in it will be pulled into hell. Master has many children and juniors, and he watched them die of natural causes. He has never let any of the juniors soak in the pool. Batman shook his head and rejected the idea. Devil's territory, pulled souls into hell. Thea checked the information she knew, but she couldn't tell. Ninja Master was really good to his son-in-law, telling him such a secret? Talia might not even know about these things. Thea instantly abandoned the idea of dragging Batman to Ninja Master. Their relationship was much better than she thought. Looks like I still have to treat her. For such a serious injury, purely using magic to treat it would consume a lot of Thea's body. She didn't want to save her. How did Talia get hurt like this? Batman seemed to be a little reluctant to recall, but he still briefly explained. She was pushed into the chemical pool by Joker, Thea nodded. This was quite in line with Joker's habit. He would jump into the chemical pool to take a bath whenever he had nothing to do. He and Joker could resist the high poison resistance, but Talia's delicate skin couldn't. However, Thea finally thought of a way to treat her through the pool. It was a means between magic and ritual that was first found in the Orb of Horus. The ancient Egyptian pharaohs were crazy about immortality, and they tried all kinds of experiments, both humane and inhumane. They really found some ways to combine witchcraft, magic and alchemy, and they recorded a few proven effective methods on the handle of the sphere of Horus.
When they were on the Wave Rider, the artificial intelligence Gideon had specially translated a lot of relevant information for Thea.
How about this? I have a way to save her, but the ancient magic is different from the modern environment. Some conditions are not met, and I need some time to prepare. Also, Talia's body is too weak now. The effect of magic is to accelerate the body's self-healing, but her current physical condition doesn't have the foundation for recovery. Can you use medical methods to replenish enough nutrients? I'll go back and prepare. You can bring her to Star City in a week for treatment. You know that I've just taken over the Ryan Group, and I'm so busy every day. Thea shrugged, indicating that she could not come to Gotham every day to save his wife. Since he was a free man, he should come to Star City. All right, I'll leave everything to you. In this day and age, it was the patients who accommodated the doctors. Which doctor accommodated the patients? Batman felt that this was normal. He was well versed in medicine and knew that Talia's body was too weak at the moment. It was not the best time to treat her. The two agreed to contact each other again next time. Thea told him not to wake Talia up by force, and that it would be best if he could keep her under anesthesia. She flew the plane out of Wayne's old house alone. After Thea left his sight, she did not return to Star City directly. Instead, she took a detour to a residential area in Gotham. Thea! Long time no see. The one who greeted her with a smile was the little beauty Shadow, who had been abducted from Purgatory Island. How is your father? What you said on the phone was vague. At the mention of her father, Shadow's expression was strange. She was confused, and hopeful. Come and take a look. Thea had always been curious about the quartz revival technology. When she returned to Star City, she received a call from Shadow, saying that Yao Fei's heart had miraculously recovered. Thea decided to come and take a look. Shadow was now living alone with her father in an apartment. According to the court's investigation, Yao Fei had been shot in the head. With the help of genetic repair technology, his missing brain tissue had grown back, but no one could say for sure if he could recover his memories. Yao Fei's situation was similar to many vegetative patients. He had a heartbeat and breathing, but his consciousness was almost blank. Shadow could accept this result. There was always hope if he was alive. After learning that the follow-up would depend on the patient's recovery, she rejected the court's arrangement and took care of her father alone. She worked at a Chinese restaurant to support their daily expenses. Thea walked into the small house they had lived in for more than a month. She could tell that Shadow had put in a lot of effort for her father. The air in the room was fresh, and the layout was organized. Old man Yao Fei was lying on the bed with his eyes closed and a serene expression on his face. Other than his messy hair being shaved off, there was nothing special about him. She secretly used the Eye of Horus to observe his condition. The court's diagnosis was correct. Yao Fei's head wound had healed. The main reason he could not wake up was because of his missing memories. This made it difficult for Thea. There were too many things involved in memory, and she did not have a good solution. This was similar to how she erased Steve's memory. Once she erased it, it was gone. It could not be recovered. If the memory existed, it existed. If it did not exist. No matter how powerful she was, she could not make a memory appear out of thin air. I'm sorry. I don't have a good solution. Shadow knew about her supernatural abilities on Purgatory Island. When she heard that Thea could not do anything about it, her eyes darkened. Do you plan to stay in America or go back? Yao Fei was completely insignificant in Thea's eyes, but Shadow was a pitiful woman who deserved her sympathy. My father read a statement on Purgatory Island. We can't go back. Plus, the medical technology here is more advanced, Shadow answered quickly. It was obvious that she had thought about this question many times. Her answer was logical and not rushed. The medical technology here is more advanced. Thea thought to herself. If you wait a few more years, there will be more aliens with superpowers. Each one of them is a walking nuclear bomb. The casualty rate is so high. How can the medical technology not be advanced? However, there was no need to tell Shadow this. Then come back to Star City with me. Gotham is too chaotic. Thea had her reasons for saying this. Barbara had just recovered, and Talia was severely injured. Although the Joker was locked up by Batman again, Batman needed a place to vent his anger. Gotham's criminals were the best target. Although Gotham was full of ordinary people, a fight could cause a scene as grand as Mars crashing into Earth. It was better not to let Shadow see such a violent scene. In comparison, Star City was much safer without Green Arrow. Some people said that superheroes were the source of chaos. This was a little arbitrary, but it was not completely wrong. If Gotham did not have Batman, it would have a different kind of balance. The people would not have to write a will and say goodbye to their families every time they went out to buy groceries. Now, Central City without the Flash and Star City without Green Arrow could effectively prove this point by looking at the positive and optimistic attitude of the citizens. Chapter 258. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of work do you do? Thea couldn't tell if the little girl was still in school or had worked before. She looked quiet and well-educated. She couldn't have dropped out of school early like Oliver, right? I've been studying forensic science, but I didn't graduate. Shadow now had some understanding of Gotham's public security. What capitalist metropolis? Bullshit. It was too chaotic here. Thankfully, Shadow was skilled. Otherwise, She would have died with her comatose father. Forensic science? It seems to be a pretty high-end job. Sia said that she would take care of everything and leave it to her. With her current relationship with the Star City Police Department, no one would say anything even if she didn't do anything. She told Shadow to pack her luggage and set off for Star City. On the way, Thea called a detective from the Star City Police Department and Detective Lance. The new detective, who was working closely with the police, didn't even ask about the person's profession or specialty. She didn't even ask if the person was a man or a woman. Detective Lance was a little dissatisfied with her decision, but he didn't interfere too much. After helping Shadow find a place to live, the Quinn group had purchased a large amount of land in the slums during the reign of Robert Sr. and Moira. Although Sia had worked hard to bring down the property prices of the entire Star City by 20%, she still had a lot of land in her hands. Knowing that Shadow had a strong sense of pride and was unwilling to accept too much help from her, Sia found a small apartment for the father and daughter to live in. Thea told Shadow to let her know if she needed anything, but she felt that her whereabouts were uncertain. She wouldn't be surprised if she went to another planet one day. She also left Felicity's phone number with Shadow, telling her that she could trust her and that she didn't have to look for her. After a busy day, Thea felt that she hadn't missed anything, so she flew back to the Quinn mansion. She was going to discuss with Moira how to cooperate with Batman to make big news. All the work was carried out in an orderly manner. In private, several senior government officials scoffed at what Quinn Group had done, but it was true that there was no harm to all the interests. They received the money very quickly, but when it came to the specific situation, they neither nodded nor shook their heads. The attitude of a senator named Hammond was particularly bad. After receiving money from the Quinn Group, he didn't even say a single good word. Instead, he mocked Sia and scolded her. In the end, he even used a look of concern for a mentally challenged child to warn Sia that young people should be down to earth and not bite off more than they could chew. I must kill him. At the dinner table, Moira had been pulling Thea, fearing that she would slap this talkative senator to death. This is infuriating. On the way home, Thea had been nagging. Several times, she wanted to send the court to catch this bastard in front of her and teach him a lesson, but in the end, she gave up under Moira's persuasion. After calming down, Thea had to admire Superman's good temper. The ugly faces of these people in power, even an earthling like her had the intention to kill, but he, a strong alien, was able to endure it. His self-restraint was really not simple. But calming down was one thing. She didn't intend to let this bastard go. She had even stabbed Ares to death, so why would she be afraid of a senator with an empty title? She even dared to attack Washington when he made her unhappy. But after the two sides met, something happened to him. Anyone could contact her. Thea was going to wait for a month, and when things calmed down, she would kill him. She wrote down this person's name on the first page of the small black book, Senator Hammond of Seaside City, and wrote the date on the side. Don't do it now. Moira saw her writing action. If she wrote it down so solemnly on the first page, she definitely wasn't going to thank him. She knew Thea's current ability, and she was not a soft-hearted person. She looked around and whispered to Thea. Understood. He can live for another month. The mother and daughter smiled without saying anything. It was self-evident who this he was. Time passed quickly, and a week flew by.
Batman and Thea made an appointment to ask for the address, and then rushed over in his Batfighter in the middle of the night.
This city is very quiet. Damien, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat, insisted on following for some unknown reason. Batman also wanted to spend more time with his father. Thinking that there were no battles in Star City, he agreed after a little hesitation. Now, facing his son's question, he did not know how to answer. There were not many fights here, let alone battles. Without comparison, there would be no harm. Compared to Gotham, where submachine guns would begin to hiss at night, Star City was peaceful and looked like heaven. Was the difference that big? There were millions of people in Star City, but it was really peaceful here. Although Batman had flown through the city in a fighter jet, there were no violent scenes of robbery or murder in the city. Since there were no criminals, there was no need for a superhero, right? Soon, they arrived at Thea and Felicity's secret base. When they met, Batman could not wait to ask, "Your city is really great, what's the secret?" When Thea understood his question, she was a little speechless. What secret was there? The large gangs were all under Malcolm's control, and the few scattered gangs were not a threat at all. The rest of the unemployed were sent back to work, and the active ones were sent to other cities. After working hard for a day, they went to bed early. The small gangs could not find any new blood even if they wanted to. Several factors contributed to Star City's current peaceful and stable situation. After Moira came to power, she had a good reputation and spread her influence to the surrounding cities. In half a year, Star City gained hundreds of thousands of residents, all of whom migrated from the nearby cities that were rescued by the superheroes. "We're a small city, after all." "Small cities are like this," Thea replied embarrassedly. Batman brought Damien and Barbara, whom they had met before. Thea mainly introduced the naughty child to Felicity. After learning that he was Batman's son, Felicity, who had a good relationship with Catwoman, could not help but worry for her friend. "This child is already so big. Can you win against him?" Thea led them to a separate room. As soon as they entered the room, they covered their noses. "What a strong smell of blood." "That's right. This is a secret technique developed by the ancient Egyptian pharaohs to seek immortality. It's called the blood pool. The effect is a little slow, but there are no after effects. It's suitable for Talia's recovery," Thea explained to Batman as she pointed at the large square pool in front of them. "Talia will absorb the essence of the blood to slowly heal her injuries. Optimistically, it will take about a month. If you don't have any questions, shall we begin?" When the doctor asked the patient if they had any questions, the subtext was, "I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Hurry up and pay for the hospitalization." Chapter 259. In ancient times, the process of healing a blood pool was considered to be infuriating. However, in modern times, many conditions were extremely convenient. There was no need to massacre villages and cities to collect human blood. There was plenty of fresh blood in the hospital blood bank. As long as you paid, there would be unemployed people fighting to donate blood. Blood would coagulate very quickly. The solution that the ancient people came up with was to burn as much firewood as possible to maintain the temperature of the blood. In modern times it was not so troublesome. There were a few rounds of resistance wire around the pool. When needed, electricity was enough to maintain the heat. "Take off her clothes and put her in the pool." Thea measured the temperature. It was quite suitable. She signaled Batman to stop daydreaming and quickly carry her in. "Me." Batman was a little dazed. Usually, he was the one who ordered others to do this and that. Now that he was being ordered around, he was a little uncomfortable. He looked around and saw that the room was full of women. Damien was still a child. It seemed that he was the most suitable. Sia knew that there weren't many opportunities like this, so she ordered Batman to get busy. "These are Egyptian hieroglyphs?" Batman placed Talia in the pool and began to observe the patterns that Thea had carved on the walls. "Yes, it is not accurate to call this a spell. This is closer to a ritual." Thea continued to add magic to the hieroglyphs on the walls. When the walls were completely lit up, the blood in the pool began to flow slowly. There was a tendency to form a whirlpool. The center of the whirlpool was the unconscious Talia. Thea walked to the side and connected the blood pool with electricity. "Maintain this temperature. The blood will speed up her recovery. After 3 days, change the blood pool. Are you going to stay here or?" "I'll go back to Gotham first. I'll come back in 3 days." Batman looked at Thea's treatment method, which was a mix of ancient rituals, medieval magic, and modern technology. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that it was very strange. However, Talia's expression was indeed much more relaxed. He was secretly relieved. Leaving Barbara and Damien behind, he returned to Gotham alone. "Bruce, I don't know if I'm old and deaf, but you want me to build some temple in Turkey in the name of you and Wayne Group?" The old black man, Lucius Fox, looked at Bruce Wayne, who was sitting in the president's office with his mouth wide open. "You're right, old man." Bruce took off his bat suit and came to Wayne Enterprises in a suit. His face twitched a little, but as a man of his word, he had to do what he promised. It had been a week since Thea started treating Talia, and he could tell that Talia was gradually recovering. 2 days ago, when Talia woke up, the family of 3 even said a few words. He owed them too many favors. Even if he originally intended to be perfunctory, now he had to treat it as his own business. Thea had already opened up a channel in Turkey, and the politicians in Turkey were all smiles after receiving a huge reward. They couldn't wait to get as much as they could from this act of destroying the country's reputation and fattening their own pockets. The Prime Minister in charge of the government still had a bit of patriotism. After receiving a promise that they wouldn't station troops or build a secret base, he tacitly agreed to this action. In short, you can publicize it with great fanfare, but our government won't see or hear it. Whatever you do has nothing to do with us. With the local government settled, the only thing left to settle was how to persuade the American government to take charge of this matter under the premise of Bruce being a target. With Batman's highest IQ on Earth, he could imagine how much criticism he would attract once he made a move. However, when he saw Barbara, who could run and jump, old Gordon, who was full of smiles, and the mother and son who stayed in Star City every day, he felt that this was nothing. Isn't it just sacrificing a little face? I have plenty. Having made up his mind, Batman immediately changed into a suit and came to Wayne Enterprises. He looked for his old partner, Lucius Fox, to discuss the details of this matter. Is there a new type of energy buried under that place? The old man asked in a low voice. No. Bruce Wayne shook his head. It was just a piece of stone. Unless the stone could generate electricity, he couldn't see any energy source there. Then there's some kind of weapon that can destroy the world? Something like an ancient weapon? The old man thought of his hidden profession and automatically filled in the gaps in his mind. I'm sorry, I've used 3 types of radiation and 2 types of spectra to investigate. There's nothing there. Bruce was speechless. Did you think I didn't think of it? He had tested all the technological methods on Earth, and it was just a piece of wasteland with only a few tens of thousands of tourists every year. The old man touched his head. This isn't it. That isn't it. Are you trying to make fun of me by coming to my office so early in the morning? Even if you're the boss, I'll still spit at you. Bruce could see his dissatisfaction. Talia and the old man had been on bad terms back then. He had kept Talia and her mother a secret and only explained what had happened to Gordon and his daughter. Lucius also knew what had happened to Gordon. Now that he knew that his daughter was safe and sound, he couldn't help but feel happy for him. However, when he thought about how the matter that Gordon Sr. had promised to him in the end, he still felt a little depressed. But at least he knew the severity of the matter. If Gordon were to step in, his reputation would be ruined by half. It would be much better if Wayne Enterprises stepped in. This was the principle of sharing the damage. If it was fatal to one person, it would be fatal to 10,000 people. At most, they would lose a strand of hair. He glared at Bruce. You're really giving me a hard time. I'll make it happen. After shooing away Bruce Wayne, who had come to cause trouble early in the morning, the old man held an emergency board meeting. Bruce hadn't been able to join the board due to various boycotts. His shares were held by the old man, so he was qualified. The result of the meeting was neither happy nor depressing. Now, Wayne Enterprises had more than 20 directors. Thea controlled more than half of them openly and secretly. She had instructed them early on to neither support nor oppose today's proposal. The old man thought that the proposal would be met with fierce opposition, but he found that most people chose to abstain. In the end, the proposal passed with a very low percentage. Since it was approved, he could only accept the reality and began to do all kinds of lobbying work in the name of Bruce and Wayne Enterprises. The efficiency of the government had always been sluggish. The old man found a few elites in the group's publicity department to discuss the follow-up development. The elites were puzzled by this behavior that had nothing to do with their own business, but they had to admit that the spirit of the European and American contract was worth advocating. They didn't waste any time. Since they were paid, they would think of a solution for you. Not to mention destroying a temple, they would even help you destroy Mars. Needless to say, the more people there were, the more firewood there would be. The few of them finally came up with a set of somewhat radical but effective publicity strategies. Chapter 260. Spread the news that we're going to push all 8 miracles together? Then cancel 7 and push only 1? When Bruce returned to the old mansion after another night of fighting criminals, Lucius handed him the crystallization of collective wisdom. Being proficient in psychology, he could understand the wisdom contained in this. The plan was very good and had a high chance of success. But the discussion on the first day will be huge. The old black man spoke his mind. Afraid of being implicated, the old black man had already deployed 3 bulletproof cars and hired 8 bodyguards. In order to prevent the news from spreading, he was different from the old butler, Fu, and Gordon. Both of them were soldiers when they were young, and Fu was from the British Special Forces. The old black man was an intellectual when he was young. What if he met a few hot-blooded young men who wanted to beat him up? It was always good to be cautious. He still wanted to live a few more years. This scope is too big. Let's modify it. Set it as those that have been destroyed. We can't touch that indescribable country and Egypt. Bruce thought for a while and proposed an improvement plan.
His vision was far greater than the few workers and was not limited to what was in front of him. It was barely acceptable to define it as repairing damaged ancient buildings on a small scale, but you want to demolish those that are still intact?
What are you thinking? Will the political leaders of various countries interpret that America is trying to establish a new hegemony? What about demolishing and rebuilding? You want America to become a true United States. That's a dream. No doubt, the battle will last until dawn. When World War III starts, we'll drop 100 nuclear bombs first. The old black man was also frightened by the scene he described. He made up his mind to send the elite who gave the suggestion to the cleaning department when he returned. It was useless for anyone to plead for mercy. Out of a sense of social responsibility, we feel the loss of traditional culture. We will demolish and rebuild these world-class buildings at the original location. Thank you, everyone. The next day, the old black man, Lucius, gathered all the media he could find and announced the shocking news under the sleepy eyes of the crowd. Then he quickly ran away. Did you hear that? What is Wayne Group doing? It seems like they want to rebuild something. Let me listen to your voice recorder. After Lucius left, the entire press conference fell into a strange atmosphere. The reporters were inquiring about the news from each other. Initially, they were whispering, but in the end, they all converged into one voice. F***CK, F***CK, F***CK. Wayne Corporation was going to make big news. When Bruce Wayne's feat was first revealed by the media, the public didn't believe it. The 8 wonders of the world had stood tall for so many years. Who would be so bored as to want to rebuild them? Wouldn't that be crazy? Everyone thought that it was a ridiculous move by the Gotham playboy to attract attention because he had nothing better to do. However, as Wayne Enterprises continued to hold briefings, they surveyed the land today and solicited ancient architectural designers from all over the world tomorrow. Only then did everyone realize that Bruce Wayne was serious this time. Like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples, the entire society started a heated discussion about this matter. As a young American with no heritage, this move was akin to spreading martial arts across the world, destroying the heritage of all countries with historical culture and pulling everyone to the same level. Many rebellious youths, who had been brainwashed by liberal democratic ideology, shouted loudly in support of Bruce Wayne in front of the cameras of the major media outlets. That was their idol. In the blind pursuit of these people, several high-tech products of Wayne Enterprises were almost sold out, and even the company's stock price rose slightly. Most of the domestic politicians in the United States felt that this matter had nothing to do with them and neither supported nor opposed it. A few guys who had received money from Wayne Corporation also expressed their support in the corners. The military was in deep trouble in Iraq and was very happy that Wayne Enterprises helped them divert the attention of the global media. A general named Ryan even publicly expressed his support. Compared to the tepid reaction in the United States, it was much more intense abroad. The British, who had a traditional relationship with the United States across the sea, thought that this was another test by the Americans to abandon their traditions and forget their ancestors. The Prime Minister, who was from the Conservative Party, scolded Bruce Wayne by name for 15 minutes in a televised speech. Even Amanda Waller, who was training Oliver as an agent in Hong Kong, was alarmed. She had just sent her subordinates to receive the clown girl. In fact, she wanted the clown more, but Batman's attitude was extremely tough. They could talk about anything else, but the clown girl would never be given to her. The two sides almost fell out because of this. Amanda was very upset. She thought that Batman would stop for a few days, but when this big news reached her ears, she was still shocked speechless. Her first reaction was that Batman was crazy. Not the kind of crazy that was used as a modifier, but really crazy. But after gathering the information from all sides, she found that he was just like a normal person and didn't do anything antisocial or anti-human. It doesn't make sense. Why would Bruce do this kind of thing? Could it be a split personality? She instructed her subordinates to investigate. She investigated carefully and went through all the information behind the scenes. Amanda didn't believe that Batman had nothing to do and was so free that he would make fun of people all over the world. The Heaven's Eye Society's intelligence network was built with a lot of money. As the top management deliberately suppressed Steve Trevor's power, more and more resources were concentrated in Amanda Waller's hands. A task force that was good at dealing with intelligence was busy for a day, and finally sent the behind-the-scenes results to Amanda's desk. Wayne Corporation was the one who pushed this in the first place? Amanda, who was rolling in conspiracies every day, automatically thought of Oliver Wayne, who was under her control. Was there a connection between these two things? After thinking about it repeatedly, she felt that there was no connection. She had accidentally found Oliver Wayne, and the Wayne family shouldn't have known that he was still alive. Then, this matter was pushed by Thea Wayne, who had a good personal relationship with Batman. Amanda didn't sleep for a night, and she couldn't figure out the purpose of Thea building the temple. Batman was such an unruly person. How could he be the scapegoat? There must be some inside story that she didn't know. She continued to investigate. This time, it was not easy to investigate. His subordinates busied themselves for half a month before they accidentally captured a picture of Sia shopping with a few women. A sharp-eyed agent spotted the red-haired Barbara, and only then did they roughly connect the dots. The paralyzed Barbara Gordon has been cured? How was she cured? Amanda looked at the investigation results and still wasn't satisfied. She asked her subordinates with an unfriendly expression. Her subordinates pushed the blame to each other. They didn't know either. Barbara was either in Star City or Gotham. They couldn't forcefully kidnap her and force her to spit out half a liter of true water and ask her how she was cured? First of all, Barbara wasn't weak. If they didn't send a standard combat team, they wouldn't be able to take her down. Also, they were government employees, not gang members. They gave up the generous salary of a large corporation to work for the government because of the justice in their hearts. They wouldn't use violent means to deal with a hero of justice. Chapter 261. Amanda felt that her subordinates weren't good enough. What she needed were obedient subordinates, not these hot-blooded and patriotic young men. The idea of forming an unscrupulous team to do things that the Sky's Eye Society wouldn't be able to do kept lingering in her mind. No, it wasn't time yet. Amanda felt that the thugs she had detained were far from enough to gain the support of the government. She still needed someone powerful to ensure that the thugs wouldn't rebel. Everything had to be planned. Although she didn't have much hope for the results, Amanda still instructed her subordinates to do their best to investigate. Although Talia's injuries were recovering slowly, new changes could be seen every day. Barbara, who was nominally here to take care of her, naturally had more free time. She stayed in Thea's secret base every day and taught Felicity some computer science in her spare time. Felicity also began to show extraordinary talent in computer science. Her days were very comfortable. Thinking of the bullets raining down in Gotham, she felt like she was in another world. The girls felt uncomfortable cooped up in the house every day, so Thea suggested that they go out shopping. She felt that it would be less lively if there weren't enough people, so she invited Shadow, who had successfully entered the Star City police station, and Laurel Lance, who had nothing to do every day and was about to close down her law firm. Because of Shadow's work, Detective Lance wasn't happy that Thea randomly put people into the police station, but after seeing that it was such a gentle girl, he completely stopped complaining. Laurel came to the police station a few times to meet Detective Lance, and gradually got to know Shadow. As someone who knew everyone, Thea helped introduce the girls to each other. Actually, they knew most of the people in Star City. She mainly introduced Barbara Gordon from Gotham. They're chatting happily. Felicity walked behind Thea and Shadow, holding a large glass of Coke. She kept glancing at Barbara and Laurel, who were walking in front of her. They had clearly just met, but why did they hit it off so well? The little beauty Shadow nodded on the side. Her relationship with Laurel was lukewarm. She had always thought that Laurel was cold and aloof, but today it seemed that wasn't the case at all. Thea could only laugh and say that she didn't know either. Who knew that Barbara and Laurel would get along so well? However, their personalities were similar. They were both American women with a strong sense of justice. They were cheerful, optimistic, and idealistic. They were not like Felicity, who was more than a meter tall, or Thea, who was cunning, or Shadow, who was basically a foreigner. Barbara and Laurel had the same upbringing and education, so they had a lot of similar viewpoints. At first, the two women chatted with the other three for a while. Later, when they talked about their backgrounds, they realized that their backgrounds were almost the same. They came from divorced families, and both of them grew up under the wings of their upright sheriff fathers. A sense of identity formed between them, and they had more in common.
Thea felt that if it wasn't for the fact that they were in the wrong era, the two of them would have already become sisters.
Is someone watching us? Shadow whispered to Thea. Thea waved her hand, indicating that it was fine.
The only person who followed Laurel around the Star City was her other brother, Tommy.
However, Thea was still impressed by Shadow's keen senses. As an archer, keen intuition was essential. Yao Fei's training of his daughter was indeed commendable. You all have great figures. The girls had been shopping for the whole day. They hadn't been robbed or killed. It was a luxury for Barbara to be able to shop so smoothly. They sent the things they bought back to their respective residences. Felicity suggested that they do Pilates. Laurel looked at the girls' figures in the changing room and touched her belly. She couldn't help but sigh.
Thea, Barbara, and Shadow had all gone through a lot of training. They didn't usually show it, but when they changed their clothes, it was obvious that they were different from ordinary citizens like Laurel. Thea's muscles were slightly more normal after being modified by divine power, but Shadow and Barbara had muscles.
That's why we're here to exercise. Felicity quickly changed the topic when she saw Laurel's confusion. She stretched her arms and legs, indicating that she was also an ordinary person. Laurel recovered when she saw Felicity's ordinary figure. If 4 of the 5 girls were the type who were fit and beautiful, she would have given up on the world. However, the ratio was still a little high. While they were exercising separately, Barbara whispered to Thea, "Laurel doesn't know about you?" "No, but I think she's a little suspicious. You know that her father is a policeman." Thea noticed that Laurel was still suspicious. But she's a good person. Her body is strong too. With a little training, she'll become a hero of justice. It was obvious that Barbara had high hopes for Laurel. She wanted to introduce her to the group immediately. Thea was a little speechless. Their friendship had warmed up too quickly. Should she say that it was no wonder she was the founder of the Raptor Squad? They just met this morning. She responded to Barbara's unspoken words. If she doesn't object, I'm fine with it. You don't have to mention me. I still need to observe her closely. Barbara happily ended the conversation. As for the observation, it was probably just a formality. Thea was already used to the changes in history. She was already hanging out with Diana. Nothing could change this much. Thea didn't care if Olivier returned to the city and found that not only was Shadow still alive, but Tommy and Laurel also had amazing skills. Since they weren't worried about being exposed, they did their best. Their extreme movements shocked the Pilates trainer. After the exercise they went home. Barbara used the excuse that she wasn't familiar with the streets of Star City to walk with Laurel. Why are you all so fit? Ordinary people can't do what you did just now. Laurel also felt that she had hit it off with Barbara, so she didn't mind that it was their first time meeting. She got straight to the point. You know that my father is Jim Gordon, but you don't know my other identity. I'm Batgirl. Barbara said as she took out a long whip. She pointed it at a tree trunk not far away and exerted force. She broke a branch that was as thick as her arm. Then, she twisted her wrist and pulled the broken branch back. Barbara stared at Laurel with burning eyes. Now that you know who I am, do you have anything to say? She would be disappointed if Laurel showed any fear or contempt. However, the future Black Canary didn't disappoint her. Superhero? You're Batman's companion? Oh my God. Laurel covered her mouth in disbelief. But she soon realized another problem. Is Thea one too? I've known her for years. Chapter 262. Barbara smiled. Thea is a superhero just like Felicity. She might seem a little unreliable, but she's a great protector of the city, just like Batman. Barbara, who had recovered from her injuries, no longer wanted to compete with Thea to see who was stronger. When the gap between them was not that big, they could still compete. Now that the gap between them had widened, Barbara was calm. She admired Thea even more, especially when she saw how peaceful and united Star City was. Batman investigated her past. She should have started showing up 2 years ago. At that time, her brother and father had just passed away. Laurel. I was wondering why this name sounded so familiar. You're the woman who dated her brother, aren't you? As Barbara spoke, she realized that the world was too small. When Batman was collecting information on Thea, Laurel and Olivier were the ones who compiled the information. It was only now that they matched the photos. Is that so?
She has been secretly protecting the city since then. The security of Star City is indeed much better than 2 years ago.
Laurel compared the 2 years.
There was indeed a period when Thea was nowhere to be seen. Could it be that she was fighting crime every day? Their perspectives determined the limits of their vision. They did not know the various ways to resolve conflicts. They were simply using violence to curb violence, thinking that all crimes could be solved with their fists.
Laurel Lance, the more righteous the better. Are you willing to join us?
Of course I want to, but I don't have the strength. Laurel felt that she could not master the technique of wielding a whip well.
Barbara thought for a moment.
It seemed that Thea did not support or oppose this, so she would train her. After being scolded by Batman every day, she felt unexpectedly good to be able to teach someone else a lesson. The next day, when Thea came to the secret base in the afternoon to rest after working for half a day at the corporation, she found that there was one more person in her base. Laurel, who was sweating profusely and wearing a sports singlet, was learning boxing when she saw Thea come in.
Thea could only smile and nod. She felt that Laurel's training was useless.
Star City was unexpectedly quiet before the return of the Green Arrow. If she had the time, she might as well use it to expand her law firm. However, to each his own. Thea could not say anything. Now that she saw Barbara excitedly teaching, Laurel lowered her head and studied hard. Thea also remembered the scene when she was learning from Malcolm. She did not know where old Malcolm had run off to. It was also rare to find someone who had gone missing while searching for his roots and ancestors. After watching them teach for a while, Thea went to Felicity and poked her.
Aren't you going to practice?
I don't have any sports cells.
Felicity was depressed. She was lazy, but she had pestered Thea to teach her for a few days.
However, the results were really shocking. The girls' coordination was too poor. Even the simplest movement would be distorted.
In the end, Felicity could only give up. The two chatted for a while.
Thea went to read by herself. A few days ago, she went to visit a few of the leaders of Princeton and gave them a large sum of money.
Both sides were very happy.
Her plan of half a year of university, 1 year of master's degree, and 2 years of doctorate had reached a preliminary consensus. As long as her results were valid, the school would not stop her from getting a degree. Instead, they would publicize it.
This was a good thing for both sides.
Thea's memory had been strengthened by divine power. It had long surpassed the limits of humans. It was too easy for her to learn simple university courses in Europe and America. She did not have any doubts that she would graduate on time. As a public figure, it was not nice to wear the title of a high school graduate every day. Getting a doctorate was much more impressive.
Time passed quickly.
Thea occasionally went out to do some exercise. Felicity was focused on writing software for some unknown purpose. In the empty room, only the sound of Barbara beating Laurel could be heard.
Slap.
Stand up.
Slap.
Watch your feet.
Slap.
Too many flaws. Laurel's nose was bruised and her face was swollen.
Thea gritted her teeth.
Needless to say, this was the standard posture that Batman taught Robin and Barbara. It was simple and crude. There were not many fighting principles to be taught. Perhaps Americans were used to this kind of physical memory learning method. Thea was more and more grateful that it was her biological father who taught her. If it was a universal teaching method, she might not have been able to persevere. While she was pondering, she saw Barbara hit Laurel's face with the stick again. When Laurel stood up, blood dripped from her nose and dripped to the ground.
"Are you okay?"
Barbara asked. Laurel shook her head to show that she could still persevere. Seeing Thea not far away, Barbara motioned for her to treat her nose first. She then went to Thea with the stick in her hand.
"How long do you think Laurel will be able to fight?"
Barbara was also exhausted. She picked up a bottle of water and gulped it down.
Thea was a little speechless. "You guys are too impatient. You learned the truth yesterday and practiced for a day today. You want to fight?
Is there such a fast teaching method in the world? Forgive me for being blunt, but she's still far from it." Thea was not afraid to tell the truth. After all, Laurel was related to Oliver and Tommy. If she was asked to fight criminals after a day of practice, it would be asking her to die.
Thea would not agree. "You misunderstood me.
I mean, do you have any auxiliary methods?
Your Star City is too peaceful.
I think Laurel needs some practical experience. You want her to go to Gotham. Will Batman agree?"
Batman's standards for his companions could be described as harsh. Thea really did not think that Laurel could pass. Barbara's expression was a little gloomy. Dick left to be his Nightwing. I also want to find something to do.
After this injury I thought a lot.
Some of what Dick said was right. If I stay under Batman's wing for a long time, I will never grow. I want to form my own team to fight criminals. Is this the prototype of the Raptor team? Thea nodded. She could see that the Nightwing still held an important place in Barbara's heart. However, Barbara was now able to listen to other people's opinions. She was no longer the hot-blooded girl who did things without thinking. This was also an improvement. She came to her for help instead of the more familiar Batman. This meant that she had made up her mind to fly alone. As Laurel's friend, she should help. As for Laurel's ability, it was easy to solve. She just needed to design a sonic device according to the original plot. If you want her to fight in a short time, I don't think it's difficult. Thea thought about the principle of the sonic device. She could definitely make it. Have you paid attention to Laurel's voice? Her voice is higher than normal people's. I can make her an audio amplifier that can send out ultrasonic waves to knock down enemies. What do you think? Thea said as she took out a pen and paper to draw a sketch for Barbara. Chapter 263. Barbara looked at Thea as if she was looking at a monster. I just mentioned it casually, and you came up with a plan in just 2 or 3 minutes. She then looked at the sketch Thea gave her. Although she wasn't as skilled in machining as Batman, she was still highly educated. After looking at it, she gave Thea a thumbs up. It wasn't difficult to make this small device. When Laurel was ready to go home after a day's training, Thea handed her a necklace. Do you see this blue device? You can press it and speak for 5 minutes. The chip inside will record your voice, and only you can use this device. When you shout with all your strength, the audio amplifier will emit your voice at least 10 times louder. That's about it. Thea explained the principle to Laurel in an orderly manner. This is for me. Do you mean I'm a superhero? Laurel was so excited that she almost jumped up. You have to finish your training. Otherwise, no matter what Barbara says, I won't let you go on a mission. Thea's words touched Laurel. Although her body was full of pain, she still hugged Thea tightly. You're really good to her. Is it because she's your brother's woman? Laurel went home to rest, and Barbara came to chat with Thea. She wanted to know more about her new teammate. Maybe. Thea didn't say much. Sometimes, she envied girls like Barbara and Laurel. They had dreams and drive, and once they found a goal, they would keep going. Thea wasn't as open-minded. She had too many concerns and too many considerations. She was working at full capacity every day, but she still felt that there were a lot of things to do and a lot of plans to complete. On the 3rd day after she helped Laurel make the equipment, her office was blocked by a 6-year-old child. Miss Thea, this child. The female assistant outside the office only saw a blur in her eyes before a child slipped in. She hurriedly ran over to apologize. The Quinn Group was currently the largest company in Star City. If she was fired, she wouldn't be able to find a new job. It's fine. I know this child. Thea waved her hand to dismiss her assistant. She looked at Damian Wayne helplessly. Did something happen to your mother? As the number of people in the secret base increased, Thea was afraid that it would affect Talia's treatment. Thus, she found a comfortable house in the slums for her and her son to live in. Talia had already recovered more than half of her combat strength, and a few of her subordinates had also arrived in Star City. Their safety was guaranteed. Thea always hurried over to activate the magic circle of the blood pool. She hadn't seen Damian for days. I want to hire you. The kid's words were shocking. Thea wanted to laugh, but when she saw Damian's serious face, she knew that he was serious. She stopped teasing him and asked, What do you want to hire me for? My grandfather has been searching for traces of magic all his life. I don't want to be an ordinary person. I want to learn magic from you, Damian said to Thea seriously. His eyes were clear and pure. Thea got up and closed the door. She thought about her words and said, Listen, Damian Wayne. Do you mean what you said? Isn't that what your grandfather or parents want? The kid nodded solemnly. It seemed that she could make use of this kid. They were not related to each other. Thea valued the value of this person. Damian's value was much greater than he thought. However, Thea still had the principle of keeping her word. She would not lie to a kid. She wanted to see if Damien had the talent to learn magic. If he didn't have the talent, everything was just empty talk. Stand still. Don't move. Let me see if you have the talent to have a magic affinity. Thea summoned a light ball next to Damien's nervous face. She looked at it and shook her head. There was no light element. She summoned the 4 elements of earth, fire, water, and wind. Although Thea did not have the earth and water elements, she could still do it by simulating magic. Among the 4 main elements, only the earth element had a slight fluctuation, but it was not strong. When she finally summoned the dark element, she could feel that the dark element was obviously attracted. Thea took off the plane mirror and said, "Kid, you are lucky. You have an affinity with the dark element and can also sense the earth element. However, considering your age, the connection with the earth element will become weaker and weaker when you become an adult. You obviously have too much of a single element, but not to the extent of having 2 elements. You can barely be considered a good talent." Damien was relieved when he heard this. He was not stupid. When the 5 light balls did not respond, he almost lost hope. Fortunately, he proved that he was not useless. Thea silently looked at Damien, who was clenching his fists. This kid's talent was not bad. Old Ma and Tommy could not even sense a trace of magic. He had the blood of Batman and Ninja Master. The dark element in his body was obviously more than other elements. Considering the 2's personalities, habits, and other factors, this result was expected. Thea did not want to appear too proactive. She lazily lay on the chair and said slowly, "Tell me, what kind of reward can you pay? Do you think this is Hogwarts, where you can come and learn as long as you pay?" "I am willing to pay any reward." It could be seen that the young Damien had thought about this question many times. His answer was resolute and decisive. After waiting for 10 minutes, just when Damien was wondering if Thea had fallen asleep, Thea slowly stood up and said, "Young man who thirsts for power, I don't want your money, let alone your life or soul. My reward is very simple." Thea stared into Damien's eyes and said, "I want Ninja Masters." Damien's little face instantly tensed up, waiting for her to continue. "I want Ninja Master's sword." Ah! Damien was shocked by her heavy breathing. He thought she wanted Ninja Master's life or something, but in the end, she only wanted a sword? Judging from your expression, you have seen it before? That's great. Give me the sword. I don't care what means you use, whether it's stealing, robbing, or begging with your mouth, it doesn't matter. Once the sword is in my hands, I will teach you magic. Thea dragged Damien, who was still in a daze, out of the office. "My words are as simple as that. You can go wherever you want." After saying that, she ignored Damien and walked away. Damien, who was like a little adult, left Wayne Building. He initially thought the mission would be easy. But after recalling his grandfather's attitude towards the sword and connecting it with Thea's mission today, even a fool would know that the sword was extraordinary. He could not get it with his own strength. In the end, Damien made up his mind and went back to his residence to discuss it with Talia. Chapter 264. Damien told Talia about his meeting with Thea. On one hand, Talia felt that her son was too bold. He dared to make a deal with Thea, who was definitely not kind at the age of 6. On the other hand, she was proud of her son's talent in learning magic. She was seriously injured this time and thought that she was going to die. She didn't expect Thea to treat her in such a messy way. Now, she was about to recover. This made her deeply feel the wonders of magic. She also had a clear understanding of the ancient secrets that the Ninja Master had tirelessly collected for 800 years. The Master had been searching for 800 years for an opportunity, and now it was going to fall on her son. How could she not be happy? But when she thought of the Master's horror, as his biological daughter, she was the most emotional. You would never know how many trump cards he had hidden. The clown dared to go in and snatch people because he was too crazy. But how many clowns were there in the world? Talia didn't think that she was that strong. Thea's mission happened to be within their limits. They couldn't do it if it was harder, but it wasn't difficult if it was easy. This kind of mission that required a lot of brain power and energy made Talia grit her teeth. But for her son, she was determined to get it. As for making a fake sword to fool them, she didn't dare to do that. Damien's learning was not a hammer business. He had to learn from Thea for a long time. If one day they found out that it was fake, Damien's life would be in danger. Both mother and son didn't mention asking Batman for help. Damien felt that his pride didn't allow him to ask too many people for help. Talia, on the other hand, knew that Batman and the Ninja Master were friendly. To be honest, she felt that the Ninja Master valued her more than Batman. When I recover, we'll go back to Nanderbart together. Let's. The mother and son stayed up all night, discussing their plan. Thea didn't care about their plan. As the saying goes, no matter how hard one tries to guard against a thief in one's own house, they could get it themselves, ask Batman for help, or even force it. Thea only cared about the results. She didn't care about the process. With the replacement of the old and the new, the company's affairs were gradually on the right track. Naturally, as the chairman, she had fewer things to do. With the moon goddess's chosen one ability, as long as she was in Star City, she would be able to sense when her name was mentioned at night. If it was just a few words of complaint, it would be fine, but if it was the kind of dissatisfaction, then it would be bad luck. Those who were lucky would be transferred to other cities, such as metropolises or cities like Gotham where superheroes were more active. If they did not court death, they could live for a few more years. As for those who said nasty things, they would directly send the sharp claws of the court to deal with them. After that, all he had to do was report the missing person to the police station. What code name do you think is suitable for Laurel? Babla asked Thea, who was reading a book. The book looked very thick, and Babla couldn't even read the words on the cover. Just by looking at the very abstract illustrations between the pages, she knew that it wasn't a science book. Thea looked up from the complicated magic book and found that Laurel was listening attentively. After thinking about it, she couldn't think of a good name, so she decided to use the original one. I remember that Inspector Lance gave you sisters a black canary when you were young. Plus, the Bat family is all dressed in black. You don't like colorful things, right? How about Black Canary? Good name. You have a talent for naming. The two girls thought it was a good name. Thea was a little embarrassed. I have a talent for naming. Didn't you hear the moose in the ring roaring? With a good name, trouble would follow. Laurel practiced for 2 days and thought that she had improved a lot, so she started to ask Babla for weapons and equipment. Babla was ready to go solo, so it wasn't appropriate for her to ask Batman for things. It just so happened that there was a rich and resourceful person in front of him, so the task of making weapons and equipment was given to her. Thea looked at Laurel's skills. To be honest, she wasn't very good. Although Thea's current targets were non-humans, and she didn't care about ordinary criminals, with Laurel's current skills, there was an 80% chance that she would die in her first battle. After all, Laurel had known Laurel since they were young, and with her 2 unlucky brothers, she couldn't just watch Laurel get shot to death. Thea followed Wayne Enterprises' Kevlar bulletproof vest and made a combat suit for Laurel. It was black and could defend against pistols and sharp piercings. As for the weapons, it was unknown whether it was Laurel's own choice, or Babla wanted to make a female version of Robin to commemorate her lost love, but Laurel's weapon of choice was also a pair of sticks. A month with a rod, a year with a saber, and a lifetime with a gun. This was not a bad choice. Sia now had some understanding of the impatience of these 2 female heroes. All choices were made quickly, the faster the better. Thea felt that they could even learn the female version of the Sunflower Manual. In the original plot, Laurel seemed to have been taught by Talia's sister, Nissa, for a few days. When she had nothing to do, she would use 2 sticks to follow Green Arrow. Other heroes who used sticks were skilled in martial arts because of the principle of not killing, but Laurel didn't know any other weapons. Considering her physical fitness, it was most suitable for her to learn Slade's Kali martial arts. Unfortunately, Thea didn't know this set of martial arts. In fact, even if she didn't have the patience to teach. Try these 2 sticks. Thea called Laurel to try out the weapons. She explained while watching Laurel waving the sticks. 2 sticks made of nickel-chromium alloy, 80 centimeters long. 2 sticks can be combined into a long stick. Considering your lack of killing power, I added a discharge function to the metal stick. There's a button on the handle. Don't worry, you'll only faint. You won't die. These saintly people were too hard to please. She had to think about how to prevent them from killing at all times. Thea gave Laurel accessories, armor, and weapons, and collected a full set of graduation equipment. She didn't care about Laurel anymore and went to find a place to level up. If she died again, it would be her fate. Heifer, who had accompanied her for 3 months, naturally wouldn't forget that the Quinn Corporation had published a newspaper looking for civil engineering experts to build the maze. There were no restrictions on qualifications or professions. If it was any other time, the news media wouldn't let go of such a deviant thing. However, most of the cameras were attracted by Bruce Wayne's big news, so Thea didn't attract much attention. But her principle of no restrictions still attracted a large number of people to submit their own proposals. The people who were attracted by her generous offer came from all walks of life. There were professors from schools, employees who thought they had a talent for architecture, engineers from the army, and even small groups of explorers who were actually grave robbers. Amidst the excited cries of the heifer, he picked the most complicated one and directly decided to build it. Chapter 265. According to the government, they'll officially make a request to the Turkish side in 3 days. Did the Quinn Corporation contact the government? No, I don't know what's going on either. I just feel like the government has suddenly become very proactive. Thea was currently video chatting with Batman. She was also very confused about Batman's question. Everything was going according to plan. It would have taken another month, but the government suddenly went crazy and approved all the procedures. Thea even thought that Batman had used his hidden connections. If it's not because of our relationship, then the only ones who can push the government are the military and the Heaven's Eye Society. I'll help you deal with some of them, but you have to be careful. Batman reminded her, and the two quickly ended the call. For ordinary people, this matter was led by the Wayne Corporation, and Thea's Quinn Corporation only played a supporting role. However, the higher-ups all knew who was in charge, and it was unrealistic to ask them to selectively forget about Thea. If only I could brainwash these people. Thea put her hands behind her head and put her long legs on the table, thinking leisurely. Unfortunately, it was very unrealistic. She shook her head and threw away some unrealistic thoughts. Thea knew that the rapid increase in her power had some effect on her state of mind. Now, the first thing she thought of before doing anything was magic. This was very abnormal. The Constantine family had too much black magic. Thea decided to rest for a few days and get more sun to recover her normal state of mind. However, she was only on the balcony for an hour before she was interrupted. Commander Lyra, long time no see. Thea helplessly greeted Lyra Michaels, who was dressed in a black suit and black pants. Lyra's appearance explained a lot. Thea also understood that the Heaven's Eye Society was most likely helping her to get rid of the government's obstacles. However, since they were trying to curry favor for no reason, she could only listen to what they wanted. Amanda wants to see you. At this time, Lyra was no longer as naive as before. Her mature style was gradually replaced by the strict style of carrying out orders. After a few simple words, she stated her purpose. She's quite arrogant. Thea was dissatisfied with the way she ordered her around like a subordinate, but she quickly suppressed her dissatisfaction. She was still a quasi-ally with Amanda, and it was not worth it to make enemies for the sake of reputation. Since Thea had not decided what to do today, she might as well meet her. Where do we meet? Seaside City. Our plane is just down there. Thea's eyes. Let's go. The distance between Star City and Seaside City wasn't close. The Heaven's Eye Society's plane took more than an hour to reach this seaside city. On the way, Sia had already recalled that if it was not the same name, this should be the hometown of Green Lantern. After Thea in the plane, Thea's eyes the scenery. Thea sighed. The buildings along the way were in good condition, and the citizens were in good spirits. She could tell that the Green Lantern had not appeared yet. The scale of Seaside City was similar to that of Star City. The combined size of the two cities could not compare to a metropolis or Gotham. They were the more stable and quiet places among the first-tier cities. However, Thea knew that all this was just a facade. As long as the Green Lantern put on the ring, the hard life of the people here would begin. As the Green Lantern Corps' office on Earth, the people of Seaside City could only dream of living a peaceful life until they retired. The luckier ones would be blasted into the sky by the Red and Yellow Lantern Corps while they were asleep. The unlucky ones would be chased by aliens for 2 miles and then trampled to death. This was not an exaggeration. This was the main way of life in Seaside City for the next few years. The medical and funeral stocks would skyrocket, and the insurance, housing, energy, and other sectors would plummet. This lively lifestyle would only come to an end when the Black Death Emperor arrived at Seaside City. It was not because they had lived a happy and peaceful life, but because the entire city had been wiped out by the Black Death Emperor,
who was suspected to be a ferocious beast.
Miss Lara, you're married?
Thea sat in the back seat of the car and inadvertently glanced at Lara's left hand. The shiny ring on her ring finger was a sign that this agent had entered the marriage hall. Lara raised her left hand and looked at it.
A happy smile appeared on her face.
Yes, it's my comrade in Afghanistan. Then I really wish you all the best. Thea pretended to be happy for her. However, if she remembered correctly, Lara's first marriage with the black man, John Deagle, only lasted for a short time. Lara was still in the rising stage of her career, and Deagle had left the military camp and entered the city.
He was in a miserable state. If Oliver had not dragged the black man to kill monsters every day, they would not have had a second marriage. Talking about men was always the best topic for women to improve their relationship. Thea avoided talking about her own matters and always focused on Lara's topic. Your husband must be very gentle. Your husband actually does housework. Oh my God. It's a miracle. As they talked, the relationship between the two gradually warmed up.
Although it was not to the point where they fought side by side in Gotham, it was no longer as businesslike as it was in the beginning.
Just as the car stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse, two agents went to open the door.
When no one was looking, Lara whispered in Thea's ear, Amanda noticed your supernatural ability.
Be careful.
After that, Lara pretended to be very serious, as if what she said had nothing to do with her.
Thea pretended that she did not hear anything. She was prepared for this, but Amanda's attitude was obviously arrogant. Was it because she had more cards in her hands, or did she think that she could control herself with Oliver in her hands? Should she teach her a small lesson or a big lesson? It was so hard to choose. Thea followed the few of them into the warehouse. Lara stepped forward and did a bunch of identity checks and pupil checks. Finally, the metal door of the Heaven's Eye Society's secret base appeared in front of Thea. This is your secret base? Thea asked even though she already knew the answer. How much money did these people waste from the taxpayers? Just the 2.5 meters tall and 0.5 meter thick metal door alone was worth more than all the equipment in her secret base combined. Should she rebuild it or modify it? After seeing the Batcave and their base, Thea felt that the base in Star City was too shabby. This is Seaside City's base number 3, Lara explained with a normal expression. Thea opened her mouth slightly. What did that mean? It was so luxurious, but it was only number 3. Did that mean that there were at least 2 more bases in Seaside City? Just as she was calculating how much these bases cost in USD, she heard a muffled sound coming from inside the base.
Rumble. Under the violent shaking, they could even feel it from the door.
Something's wrong. Lara and the 2 agents pulled out their guns and rushed in. Chapter 266. Thea followed them into the building unhurriedly. Although her pace was slow, it was exactly the same as their running speed. She wanted to use the Eye of Horus to see what was going on inside, but she didn't know what the interior of the building was made of. The walls, furnishings, and metal doors greatly obstructed her view. The Heavenly Eye Society was indeed worthy of its reputation. This kind of anti-see-through technology was very advanced. Needless to say, this was definitely prepared for Superman and the Martian Hunter. Of course, it was also prepared for people like her who had nothing better to do, Thea thought bitterly. However, she wasn't sure what Amanda was doing. Listening to the continuous gunshots and cries for help, she knew that the situation wasn't optimistic. Thea thought as she walked. Could it be that she had guessed wrongly? Amanda wasn't threatening her, but acting pitiful? Did she deliberately write and direct a scene to win her sympathy? After walking for less than 10 minutes, Thea came to an extremely spacious place. Before she had time to look around, she heard a violent shout. Go to hell, ants that get in the way. The voice was hoarse and weak, like the noise of some kind of metal scraping. Thea only felt an invisible wave pressing against her. Looks like nothing. Thea reached out her left hand, trying to neutralize the wave. However, halfway through casting her magic, she knew that she had miscalculated. The opponent wasn't using magic, but some kind of strange psychokinesis. Psychokinesis was also a kind of mental power. If the opponent was just using psychokinesis, she could completely block it with her high-level magic. However, the strange aura of the opponent's psychokinesis bypassed Thea's magic barrier and hit them like a wave. Thea felt the opponent's psychokinesis in 1/10 of a second. It was indeed not very strong. With her physical fitness, this wave was no different from a gust of wind. However, she could withstand it, but the others couldn't. At the critical moment, Thea put an air shield on Lila, which offset half of the impact. At least she knew Lila, so she would help if she could. As for the other two agents, they were just unlucky. The two unlucky agents spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time as if they had rehearsed it. They fell to the ground upside down, their legs kicking a few times before they stopped moving. Lara, who had been pulled back by Thea, was in a much better state. Facing Lara, who was equipped with a windshield, the psychokinesis did not choose to retreat. Instead, it collided directly with Lara. The violent impact caused Lara to take 3 steps back. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. She saw stars in front of her eyes, but her life was not in danger. But at this moment, no one was paying attention to her. The enemy looked past her and saw Thea. She didn't go to work today. In order to bask in the sun more, she dressed casually. Her long hair was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a checkered top with a knot below her chest, revealing her smooth and delicate abdominal muscles and navel. She wore a pair of shorts with a wide belt and a pair of canvas shoes. In order not to expose his spatial ring, he also carried a slanted backpack on his shoulder. There were only some daily necessities in the bag. The originally hostile atmosphere in the room was mostly diluted by her shopping attire. In addition, she looked around as if there was no one else around, which created a lot of psychological pressure for them. Thea first looked at the guy who had attacked her just now. She immediately took a step back. This was not because the enemy had an extraordinary aura, but because the enemy was too ugly. Thea's reaction was purely a conditioned reflex when she saw a toad. It was not because the toad was very powerful, but because it was disgusting. The person in front of her had 4 limbs and a torso. It could be seen that he was a humanoid creature. But because his facial features were squeezed together, his original human appearance was unrecognizable. His clothes were dirty, and there were many bloodstains and mud on his body. But the most eye-catching thing was his forehead. His entire forehead was bulging upwards and forwards. The part that was bulging upwards stretched his entire head by a quarter. The part that was in front of him was the most exaggerated, like a big bowl that was buckled on his head. The veins on his forehead were not flowing with blood, but some kind of yellow substance. Thea glanced at him and did not want to look anymore. On one hand, it was a little disgusting. On the other hand, she remembered. Wasn't this guy the boss of Green Lantern? His mutated psychokinesis was as weak as a baby in Thea's eyes. It was not worth mentioning. Thea's psychic power was much higher than his. She simulated his psychic power fluctuations like a drop of water in the sea. Although the toad could see her, no matter how hard he tried, the invincible psychokinesis passed by her naturally as if it did not see Thea at all. The toad did not believe it and controlled some metal objects to stab Thea. But something magical happened. Every time the psychokinesis got close to Thea, it would automatically go around her. In the end, the toad was completely dumbfounded. He could not figure out whether the woman in front of him was a human or a ghost. Thea ignored him and walked to the platform in the center of the room. She found this person's side profile familiar, and now she finally saw his face. Hee hee. Isn't this the most honorable senator of America? I remember your name. What was it again? Thea took out a small black book from her bag and excitedly flipped to the first page. Yes. That's right. Senator Hammond from Seaside City. Honorable sir. Do you still remember me? Thea laughed happily. She wanted to settle the score with this guy, but she did not expect him to die in less than a month. I remember. Save me, save me. I promised you everything you asked me to do. I still have money. I'll pay you. Save me. The white-haired senator was tied to the platform. Now that he saw Thea, he did not care about his face and desperately begged for help. Remember me? Then, what's my name? Do you still remember me? Thea asked jokingly. The white-haired senator's face instantly turned pale. He stammered. Your name is Ryan. It's all right. You remember my surname, but I'm afraid a honorable sir like you can't be bothered to remember my name. Hey, that guy over there in a daze. You guys can continue playing. Thea was tired of this guy who pretended to be innocent. She saw the toad staring at the white-haired senator. You two have a grudge, right? I remember you two are father and son. What a family of weirdos. You guys can continue. Commander Amanda, I heard you were looking for me? Thea looked around and finally found Amanda Waller on the ceiling. The iron-blooded commander's image was not good at all. She was stuck to the tempered glass of the ceiling with her arms and legs spread out. Thea flew into the air and wanted to talk to her, but she realized that her face was pressed against the glass by psychokinesis. She could only fly half a circle to the other side and pretend to listen seriously. Chapter 267. It was fine to express one's dissatisfaction appropriately, but going too far was just as bad as not going far enough. Thea removed the psychokinesis control on Amanda and used a ball of mana to bring her to the ground. Looking at Amanda's high heels and short skirt, she was once an elite Special Forces soldier. However, after many years of administrative work, it was hard to say how much of her previous foundation was left. Now that she was more than 5 meters above the ground, Thea was afraid that she would sprain her ankle. However, Amanda did not appreciate it at all. She used her chin to point at Toad, who was cutting Senator Hammond's body with a small knife, and asked, "Can you deal with this guy?" Thea looked at it. "I need some time." After saying that, she stopped moving. Toads were unbeatable in the eyes of ordinary people, but to her, they were not much more difficult to deal with than the clown girl. It was still on a different level. However, she did not immediately rush over to knock Toad out and take him away. She was still waiting. She was waiting for Senator Hammond to breathe his last. Looking at Toad cutting his own father's body left and right, Thea felt all sorts of pleasure. At the same time, she could also intimidate Amanda. It was better not to play with fire. No one was more foolish than the other. Amanda saw that Thea did not move and thought about the conversation between Thea and Senator Hammond. Their last interaction was probably not positive. However, good luck was still on her side. Fortunately, she called Thea over today. Otherwise, if Toad showed his might, she, Amanda, would not be able to keep her life. That feeling of powerlessness was even heavier when she heard Senator Hammond's screams. After waiting for 3 minutes, Thea took a glance. Very good. The senator had breathed his last. It was time for her to finish her work. Although Toad's psychokinesis technique was extremely crude, Thea could not use her psychokinesis to control him. She could only use physical means. For the time being, she did not want to expose the existence of the space ring. She wanted to find a weapon in the room and quickly take down Toad. "Is it okay if I kill this guy?" Thea asked Amanda softly. "If you can capture him alive, it's best if you can. This guy's psychokinesis is very strong. Even if I knock him out, do you have any means to control him?" Humph. Amanda felt that she finally had a chance to save some face. "The Heaven's Eye Society's foundation is beyond your imagination." Thea nodded and didn't say anything. She had just noticed that Amanda had a small device that was similar to a mind control device. After all, it wasn't 1918 now. Human science and technology were developing every day, especially in this world where black technology was everywhere. It wasn't unusual for there to be some small tricks that could be used against mind control. The Toad didn't give up on trying to teach her a lesson. It was as if he was practicing a qigong. Wave after wave of psychokinesis surged toward her, but Thea easily dispelled it. This thing is not bad. Thea picked up a long rope from the ground. She had learned how to use a noose from Diana on Paradise Island, and she had practiced it when she had nothing to do in that small village. Although she wasn't as good as Diana, it was still a piece of cake for her to deal with this Toad. The Toad didn't dodge the noose that was coming for his neck. Or rather, he couldn't dodge it even if he wanted to. Thea wrapped the noose around his thick neck and pulled him up from the ground like she was pulling a carrot out of a carrot. Then, she swung her arm and slammed him against the wall. The wall of the Heaven's Eye Society was very thick. The Toad's 200-pound body didn't even shake the wall when he slammed against it. Disgusting. Thea looked at the yellow pus on the wall and felt a little nauseous. This guy was a female hero's natural enemy. In order to punish him for his disgusting appearance, she swung her arm and wrapped the noose around his neck. Then, she slammed him against the wall on both sides. At first, she could still hear the Toad's loud cries. However, after the Toad's fifth close contact with the wall, Thea realized that the psychokinesis in the room had completely disappeared. She knew that the Toad had probably fainted. "All right, this guy fainted. Why did you call me all the way here?" Thea wanted to finish her sentence and leave as soon as possible. The Toad's appearance meant that Hal Jordan had become the Green Lantern. According to the movie's sequence, the Parallax Devil was about to appear. Thea didn't want to stay here for even a minute longer. In the movie, Hal Jordan made full use of the intelligence of the people on Earth. No matter what kind of monster was thrown into the sun didn't disappoint the people on Earth. No matter what kind of enemy it would burn them to death. But how was that possible? The Parallax Devil had destroyed countless galaxies and stars. Why would it be afraid of the sun?
Now that she was in the real world, Thea was more willing to believe that there was a higher existence that defeated the Parallax Devil for some unknown reason.
Otherwise, it would be more accurate to say that Hal Jordan, a Green Lantern recruit, defeated the Green Lantern Corps' nemesis for countless years. Damian Wayne could beat Merlin after learning magic for a day. Amanda's original plan was to use Oliver's information to suppress Thea. However, she couldn't understand Thea's current level of power, so she didn't dare to act rashly. She could only activate her backup plan. Although I don't know why you want to build a temple, we helped you with your relationship with the government. You admit that, right? But I just saved you. Don't tell me that the guy on the ground with a swollen head knocked himself into the wall and fainted? Amanda's attitude was showing signs of softening. Thea's tone naturally softened as well. The two of them joked amiably as if nothing had happened. Amanda smiled. Her black skin made her big white teeth look even more prominent. You saved me for a private matter. I used the name of the Heaven's Eye Society to help you. This is official business. I'll compensate you for your private matters in the future. Compensate my ass. Thea calculated the time. Based on what she said, Oliver must be in her hands now. She thought that she didn't know, so she had to pretend that she didn't know. Understanding the plot was troublesome. There were many things that she couldn't explain. The so-called compensation for her private matters was to hand Oliver over to her, right? Damn it! She saved her for nothing. Then what's the matter? Hasn't Batman been in close contact with you? Can't you look for him? Amanda was furious when she mentioned Batman. The Joker was the good-looking leader of Amanda's villains. He was smart, crazy, and had no superpowers. If the Joker was in her hands, her plan of forming a villainous team would be more than half complete. Unfortunately, Batman was stubborn. Amanda's call was useless. There was no room for negotiation when it came to the Joker. She couldn't tell Thea the truth that the Heaven's Eye Society and Batman's negotiations had fallen through. She could only say, Batman has a lot of things to do recently. We think you're more free. Thea naturally didn't comment on this. What does it have to do with you? The president is also free. How dare you give him something to do? Then tell me the truth. Why did you ask me to come here? Thea felt that time was precious. She didn't want to waste time arguing with her. If it was easy, she would agree. If it was difficult, she would say that she couldn't do it. Chapter 268. Murphy's Law was very accurate at times. The more one feared trouble, the faster it would come. Just as Avatar opened his mouth to speak, a terrifying, huge, and vast mental power descended from the sky, crushing their consciousness in an instant. Avatar held on for a little while before fainting. Damn it! I should have fainted. Thea instinctively held on for a second, but now she regretted it. If she had fainted like Avatar, nothing would have happened. However, her weak resistance immediately aroused the other party's interest in her. As if it was toying with her, it began to increase the mental pressure exponentially. Thea felt that her mental power was like a small boat in a raging sea, while the other party was like a raging sea, sending out violent waves every second. She could only try her best to concentrate and face all kinds of unexpected situations. There were several times when Thea felt that her mental power had reached a dead end. She didn't dare to imagine the consequences of her consciousness entering a dead end. She could only rely on the persistence in her mind to return to clarity. She didn't know how long she had been under this mental attack. When she regained control of her body, she found herself half kneeling on the ground. Sweat had accumulated all over her body, and her clothes looked like they had been washed by water. However, she didn't have time to care about her clothes. She pushed her wet hair away from her forehead and looked straight ahead. Sure enough, the toad that was knocked out stood up again. Its swollen head was replaced by a blurry yellow light. The mental wave that caused her to be in such a sorry state came from there. Inspector Devil? It didn't seem like it. The Inspector Devil was born from the fear of all intelligent creatures. It was between formless and corporeal. It would choose its host strictly. The parallax monster that fused with its host was called the parallax demon. It wasn't that Thea looked down on the toad. Even if he begged to be its host, the Inspector Devil wouldn't take him seriously. If she remembered correctly, the toad was accidentally infected with some parallax demon cells when he was dissecting the body of the former Green Lantern. Perhaps someone could tell where the parallax monster's real body was, but Thea didn't know. The parallax demon was attracted by the toad's cells and was flying toward Earth. The yellow ball in front of her was obviously formed by the violent reproduction of the cells. As for whether it was the parallax monster or the parallax demon controlling it, Thea couldn't tell. "Earthling, what are you looking at? You don't seem to be afraid of me?" The yellow ball of light left the toad's neck, and the headless body fell to the ground. The yellow ball of light seemed to be interested in Thea. It circled her twice and asked her a question in her mind. "Nonsense. I'm scared to death. What makes you think I'm not afraid?" Thea did not want to differentiate between a parallax and a parallax. She only knew that she could not defeat one of them. Not to mention herself, even Horus would not be a match for them in his prime. The ball of light circled around her, causing her hair to stand on end. Until the ball of light spoke to her in her consciousness, she was so frightened that she did not dare to stand up. "No, you say you're scared, but you're not. Instead, you're excited. What's even more amazing is that you seem to know me. Am I right? This is the first time I've seen someone who knows who I am and isn't afraid of me after so many years." The meaning of the signal transmitted by the yellow ball of light was becoming more and more obvious. "I'm not afraid?" Thea asked herself if she was afraid. She was definitely afraid of Dire Beast, Yojia Khan, Tian Shur, and a bunch of other Dire Beast Smurfs. Even Dire Beast Smurfs were scared to death. On the other hand, she was not afraid of Darkseid, the Anti-Watcher, or the Black Death Emperor. Why was she not afraid? Because they had been defeated before. Although the parallax monster was very powerful, it was suppressed by Sinisto like a dog. She knew this part of the storyline. Her fear of the parallax monster was divided among the few big bosses whose names could not be mentioned easily. When it came to the parallax monster, most of her fear of it was washed away by the familiar storyline. Naturally, there was not much left of her fear of it. Sia did not know if her guess was right, but she slowly stood up and found that the whole world was more organized in front of her eyes. The weak breathing of Amanda and the others, and the chirping of insects in the distance, were all echoing in her ears. Thea's mental strength seemed to have increased by a lot. She roughly estimated that it had increased by at least 20%. She stared at the yellow ball of light. Shouldn't this guy be looking for Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps to fight? Why is he circling me? Just as she was wondering if she should say something, the yellow ball of light suddenly began to emit strong waves. This time, it was not a mental attack, but some kind of halo. Before Thea could say anything, the yellow ball of light wrapped her in the halo, opened a passage out of thin air, and disappeared from the secret base. Thea watched herself enter the passage in the yellow halo. The thing was too fast, and she did not have time to react. It dragged her into a strange world. Her original worldview was abandoned here. The mountains were moving, and the sea was still. There was no gravity, and many strange creatures that only appeared in dreams were floating in the air. A few giant trees that were as black as ink were chasing after a three-headed rabbit. The whole world felt chaotic and disorderly. There was no hope here, and there was no reason to speak of. This is the antimatter world, one of the negative synchronized universes at the bottom of the universe, the yellow halo explained to Thea for some reason. Thea's mind was not as fast as the halo, and they quickly left the antimatter world. The halo completed 7 warps at an extremely fast speed, and in the end, it made a very exaggerated emergency stop and threw Thea out of the halo. With a dexterous somersault, Thea landed on the ground. It felt so good to be on solid ground. There was gravity here. This meant that this was the material world. She did not have plans to live in nothingness for 180 years. Where was this? She looked at the sky first. Very good, very strong. The light was provided by dark gray clouds dotted with dots of green light. Occasionally, there would be gaps in the clouds, and there would be a deep red light behind them. Thea looked at it and felt that it was not a star, but a celestial phenomenon caused by a special gravitational force of a planet. This was definitely not Earth. The oxygen content in the air was very low. Although it was modified by divine power, Thea still felt uncomfortable running into this oxygen-deficient environment. Compared to the nearby buildings, It was obvious that she was at the highest point. She was on top of a mountain. The mountain was very tall and thin, and it stood straight in the center of the city. Earthling, welcome to Oa. Your body is very strong. You have not been transformed by any ring, but you can breathe freely here. It is hard to imagine that you are an Earthling. A voice sounded from the right. The voice was not loud, but it was clear and powerful. Thea looked over. A blue-skinned dwarf with the face of an old man was floating not far from her side. Chapter 269. Before she could finish her sentence, a few short blue-skinned aliens appeared around her. Thea counted 7 of them. Welcome to Ura, Earthling. We are the guardians of the universe. The leader of the blue-skinned aliens seemed to be afraid that she was still in shock, so he calmly repeated himself. These guys were the guardians? They claimed to have lived for countless years, but there didn't seem to be anything special about them. Thea didn't use the Eye of Horus, but she took the opportunity to observe them while they were talking. There was no trace of magic, no divine power, and they were less than a meter tall, not to mention physical attack power. These guys only had a unique life form, but other than that, she couldn't see how strong they were. Were you the ones who pulled me here? Before Thea could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by a green light flying from afar. A purple alien wearing traditional Green Lantern tights walked out of the green light. He didn't even look at Thea, but shouted at the guardians floating in the air. You want to recruit another Earthling? Wasn't Hal Jordan's lesson enough? Earthlings have weak wills. They're not suitable for the Green Lantern Corps. The dwarves calmly waited for the newcomer to vent his dissatisfaction. It was only when the purple alien was done that they slowly began to explain. Sinisto, she wasn't recruited by us. She was pulled here by the yellow energy. We just found out about it. Yellow energy, yellow light. The purple-skinned alien named Sinisto was shocked by the news for a few seconds, but he immediately realized something. He turned to the guardians and asked, You've already made the yellow light ring? My will is enough to control fear. Give me the light ring, and I'll destroy the parallax demons. However, his bold words didn't get a response from the guardians, because another green light came to the top of the mountain, and the newcomer revealed herself. I won't allow you to sacrifice Earth. Although Earth is young but... Huh? Hal Jordan, who had hurriedly flown over from Earth, was stunned by the scene in front of him. Who was this young lady dressed like an Earthling? He wanted to finish his sentence, but he realized that he had forgotten what to say. He opened his mouth wide and looked at Thea in a daze. No wonder Hal Jordan was nicknamed Husky. How could he be so silly? Thea did not feel the joy of seeing a fellow villager. She only felt that she was involved in a huge trouble. You're from Earth? No lamp ring? Without modification, how could you adapt to the oxygen and gravity of this planet? Hal Jordan also forgot his purpose. He took out his light ring and scanned Thea. He found that she was not an alien who looked like an Earthling, but an Earthling. But how could this be? This caused the worldview that he had just rebuilt to collapse again. Could it be that the physical fitness of the people on Earth was so good? Could it be that I am a fake Earthling? Sinisto. Hal Jordan. This Earthling's name is Thea Quinn. She was summoned by the yellow light ring. We just completed the yellow light ring 3 minutes ago, so... The leader of the dwarves hesitated for a moment before deciding to tell the truth. Hal Jordan was still immersed in the question of whether he was an Earthling or not. If he was not an Earthling, would he still need to risk his life to protect Earth? You must be joking. How could this Earthling be recognized by the yellow light ring? Not only is she a weak Earthling, but she is also an Earthling. Sinisto pointed at Thea and loudly vented his dissatisfaction. The guardians could understand Sinisto's dissatisfaction. After all, they had said that the yellow light ring would belong to him. Now that Thea had appeared, it seemed that they were going back on their word. However, they were wrongly accused. This was the will of the yellow light ring, and it was not under their control. The guardians communicated telepathically, and the leader of the dwarves said, Sinisto, you are the strongest warrior in the Green Light Corps. We trust you, but this Earthling was also personally selected by the yellow light ring. You must prove that you are stronger than her. Only then will the yellow light ring acknowledge you. Sinisto knew that the guardians were afraid that he could control both the green light and the yellow light at the same time, but he was still angered by their betrayal. How do you want me to prove it? Does this woman have the ability to fight? Or are you going to let the two Earthlings fight together?
The birth of the yellow light ring is inevitable. Although we are the founders of the green light core, the yellow light ring is also a part of the universe.
Sinisto, your worries are completely unnecessary. We will not obstruct you. We will only facilitate it.
The leader of the dwarves explained, you will fight it out in the green light core's arena.
Earthling, what do you think?
The dwarf turned to ask Thea. At this moment, Thea's mind was in turmoil. The yellow light ring. It had actually chosen her. Shouldn't it have chosen Sinisto at first glance? To be honest, Thea did not like this so-called emotional power. This kind of power was too illusory, and there was not a trace of feedback to the body. In terms of life's natural order, all the holders of the lantern ring were mortals, including the seemingly powerful Sinisto. His lifespan wouldn't last more than a few years longer than his fellow clansmen. When his lifespan was up, the lantern ring would fly away. Any glory or victory would be nothing more than a passing cloud. When this group of people mentioned the yellow light ring, they would think of fear, as if it was an incomparably evil power. However, Thea, who had mastered magic, had a different view. Light was not justice, and darkness was not evil. This theory was also valid on the emotional spectrum. It was laughable to artificially determine emotions as good or evil. Fear could give people enough faith. Wasn't Batman a living example? On the other hand, Thea did not feel that she had the power to control fear. She was afraid of many things, and it was fundamentally different from Sinisto's steel-like will. However, now that the yellow light ring was waiting for her in front of her, she did not need to do the prerequisite mission.
It would be a pity to give it up.
Following the transmigrator's principle of getting it first, regardless of whether it was useful or not, Thea decided to compete with Sinisto.
A few guardians took the lead and flew to a mountain not far away.
Sinisto's face was ashen, and he followed without a word.
Can you fly? I'll carry you.
Hal Jordan still did not understand what had happened, but seeing Thea's navel and long legs, he wanted to help this fellow Earthling.
Don't touch me. I can fly by myself.
Thea waved her hand and rejected his help. After the parallax's mental suppression, her mental strength had reached a new level. The magic reaction in OUA's air was much higher than on Earth, and she could fly with her own magic. Although she was not as fast as the Green Lanterns, the distance in a straight line was not far.
Thea landed lightly on their arena. Hal Jordan was the last to arrive.
He was stunned by Thea's ability to fly by herself. Without the help of the yellow light ring or any technological equipment, she just flew away. After a long while, Hal Jordan came to his senses. This woman was definitely not someone to be trifled with. The water on Earth was much deeper than he had imagined. Thea's independent flight was nothing in the eyes of the Guardians, but to Sinisto, who was still in the normal range of life, it was quite a shock. Having traveled to countless galaxies, he had seen some planets with life forms that were far beyond the local ordinary level. Although he still said it with disdain, he was already on high alert.
Chapter 270.
In Sinisto's eyes, Thea was a special species in the local food chain. After some mutations, she had abilities that far exceeded those of the same species. He could tell from Hal Jordan's dull eyes that this was definitely not the average level of an Earthling. With this in mind, Sinisto wasn't that angry about Huang Jie's choice. He had previously thought that it was a trick of the Guardians, but if it was an expert, he wasn't afraid of competing with him.
No, this is the war of the lantern rings. What's the point of taking off the ring? I reject this proposal.
After a discussion, the Guardian suggested that Sinisto take off the Green Lantern ring and fight Thea. If Thea was just an ordinary Earthling like Hal Jordan, Sinisto wouldn't be afraid if she took off the ring. However, now that Thea could fly by herself, this made his heart pound. There were many races in the universe that could fly, but there were very few humanoid creatures that could fly by themselves. At the very least, if Sinisto took off his ring, he wouldn't be able to fly. Therefore, he rejected this proposal without thinking. Sinisto insisted that this was the war of the lantern rings. After another round of silent communication, the Guardians finally made a concession.
Miss Thea, do you have any objections to using the Green Lantern ring in battle?
Thea's ability to fly had also caused their attitude to change a little. They no longer addressed her as an Earthling.
Can't the Green Lantern Corps use it too?
Thea didn't want to work for these old farts who had lived for hundreds of millions of years.
You can use a temporary ring. A light green ring appeared in front of Thea in the void. After receiving her nod, the ring automatically slipped onto her right middle finger. A massive amount of information entered her mind. Only then did Thea realize that she had been a little narrow-minded. The power of the lantern ring was very similar to magic power. Magic power existed forever, and the power of emotions had the same characteristics. As long as there was life, these emotions would exist forever. The power of the lantern ring didn't repel magic power. The two tested each other and discovered each other's characteristics at the same time. The two ancient and eternal powers miraculously merged together temporarily. The green lantern ring required willpower and courage. Thea's willpower had been tempered by magic to surpass most intelligent life. But what about courage? Did Thea have the courage to ask herself? With the power of the lantern ring, she saw the heart that she had never faced before. Malcolm had said that she was a natural warrior, and that wasn't a lie. The spectrum of emotions reflected a green ocean in her heart. This was the true portrayal of her heart. Regardless of whether she was facing Horus or Ares, she would bravely rush forward. She had a courage that she did not even realize. With her as the center, the green light swelled in all directions. In the center of the vortex, Thea raised her right hand and completed the transformation. Fortunately, it was only a temporary ring, and she didn't need to recite the oaths that she thought were shameful. However, the green and black tights were automatically put on without any discussion. Amazing courage! This is the first time I've seen someone who can produce such power after wearing the green lantern ring. I admit that you are a great warrior. The complaint on Sinisto's lips had disappeared. That was the truth. His pride wasn't to the extent that he would ignore Thea and spout nonsense. But it's strange. Why did the green lantern ring choose that earthling over there and not you? Strength 1 Respect. Hal Jordan, who was already disliked, was automatically demoted to that earthling, in Sinisto's words. He wasn't the only one who didn't understand. The Guardians who had lived for countless years didn't understand either. Could it be that the ring selection process had gone wrong? Although they hadn't seen Thea's physical body yet, they could tell that she was several levels stronger than Hal Jordan based on her power. Hal Jordan, who didn't know that he had been treated as a faulty program, was enthusiastically explaining the principles of materialization to the Earthling lady. As long as it's something you can imagine, it can be materialized by the lantern ring. My experience is to experiment with some weapons. Are you an American too? You're so young. Have you touched a pistol before? Let's start with a pistol. Thea initially listened to his long-winded ramblings, but she later realized that his imagination could only be described as poor. Pistol? What a joke. A more brainy piece of equipment. You can conjure a pistol to do the same. The knowledge of a mage wasn't inferior to that of a veteran Green Lantern who had traveled through many universes. Thea had the memories of that transmigrator, so she didn't lack imagination. She quickly selected a materialized body suitable for combat, shaped it with great courage, and completed the specific outline with her willpower. A green monster appeared in this distant star system. The monster looked like a giant tree from afar, but upon closer inspection, one would realize that the branches were made up of 50 heads and 100 arms. Each arm was holding a sharp giant sword. This was a legendary creation of divine power that should not exist in this world. It was a divine abomination, the 100-armed giant. Hal Jordan, who was next to Thea, was analyzing the process of materializing a pistol to a mortar. He almost bit his tongue when he saw such a big monster that was obviously not to be trifled with. Especially when he saw that every face of the monster that Thea materialized was lifelike, and every weapon was like a real object. He was completely speechless and hid in a corner to draw circles. No matter how slow Hal Jordan was, he could see that Thea was much smarter than him. He couldn't help but blame the previous Green Lantern who gave him the lantern ring. This guy must have been seriously injured and made a mistake. He was just an ordinary Earthling. He really didn't have the talent to be a Green Lantern. Amazing talent. To be able to reach this level on your first contact with the lantern ring, you are a strong person. I apologize for looking down on Earthlings. Sinisto wasn't afraid because of the strength of his opponent. Instead, he excitedly materialized his physical body. It was a green giant that looked exactly like him. It held a large axe in its hand and roared at Thea's 100-armed giant without showing any weakness. The larger the materialized body, the more powerful it was, but the larger the body, the stronger the person's emotions. From the outside,
Sinisto's giant was 70 meters tall, while Thea's giant was only 50 meters tall. It seemed that Sinisto had won by quite a bit, but considering the length of time that both sides had been in contact with the lantern ring, and the fact that Thea's ring was temporary, it could be said that the difference between the two sides wasn't that big. On the other hand, Thea's 100-armed giant was more detailed than Sinisto's. This was also why he valued it so much and even apologized to Earthlings. If Earthlings had Thea's qualities, they would have unified the universe long ago. In order to show that he valued his opponent, Sinisto turned on the lantern ring's language function and adjusted it to Earth's English. "Let's begin." As he spoke, he materialized two long swords. Hearing an alien speak English was indescribable. Thea was afraid that she would laugh, so she kept a straight face and also materialized a two-handed sword. Chapter 271. The two of them first controlled the giants behind them to begin the battle. Controlling so many hands at the same time was a little taxing even for Thea with her mental strength. This was the first time Sinisto's giants had seen such an offensive situation, so the two of them fought extremely conservatively in the first round. The 100-armed giants' attacks were endless, but the damage it caused was minimal. Sinisto's giants were very experienced, and after calmly dealing with a few moves, they began to gradually counterattack when they realized that the other party wasn't too strong. As Sinisto's main body slashed at Thea with two long sabers, Thea, who had expended a lot of energy on conjuring, couldn't take it anymore. She sent Sinisto retreating with a dart and cancelled the 100-armed giant, replacing it with a burly man holding a spear and wearing a horned helmet. This was Thea's old acquaintance, Ares, the god of war. Thea knew Ares very well, and with his divinity, she was very familiar with his moves. Ares, who was 50 meters tall and wielding a spear, was perfect for dealing with Sinisto, who was 70 meters tall. She had to release a portion of her mental strength to deal with Sinisto, who was equally skilled in martial arts. The English two-handed sword with a cross handle seemed to come alive in her hands as she slashed down at Sinisto's waist. Sinisto's 2-meter-tall height was a little inadequate against Thea's 1.7-meter-tall height. After exchanging a few blows, he knew that he couldn't fight on land, so he decided to fully utilize his advantage and fight in the air. He conjured chains in an attempt to bind Thea's feet. Upon seeing his actions, Thea conjured Diana's lasso and also wrapped it around Sinisto's arm. The two of them exerted their strength at the same time, and the distance between them rapidly closed. Thea threw away the lasso and aimed her sword at Sinisto's chest in an attempt to kill him in one strike. Sinisto was a little embarrassed by her desperate fighting style. He could only control the green light energy to float in the air to dodge this heart-piercing strike, but before he could rise too high, he realized that he had been caught in a net. Not far away, Green Ares, who was fighting, threw a huge green net of light at Sinisto at the risk of being struck by his opponent's axe. Sinisto's ascent was stopped, and Thea had already risen into the air to attack. With a crisp clang, Thea's two-handed sword stabbed into the green shield conjured by Sinisto, and the two weapons shattered at the same time. When Sinisto returned to the sky, he didn't plan on engaging in a ground battle. He stretched out his arm and aimed his light ring at Thea. A green beam of light shot out. Thea imitated his actions and conjured a green shield of light to offset the damage. Then she took out two sabers and faced Sinisto, who was wielding a gigantic axe. The intense battle between the two naturally attracted the attention of the nearby Green Lantern Corps. There was a constant stream of free green lanterns flying outside the arena to spectate. At first, they thought that she was a new companion, but the result of the scanning function of the light ring surprised them. This woman was an Earthling. "Do you know her?" A few people who had a good relationship with Hal Jordan asked. Thea was the boss of a listed company. It was too easy for the light ring to search for her information. Hal Jordan didn't recognize her at first, but as time passed, he finally matched her with the information on Earth. Although he matched the person, he wasn't happy at all. Hal Jordan felt that his knowledge of Earth was too shallow. This was the daughter of the chairman of a listed company, yet she was able to fight Sinisto, the greatest warrior in the history of the Green Lantern Corps. These two identities didn't match at all. Was this because the aliens were too weak, or the Earthlings were too strong? He couldn't figure it out. Faced with a few Green Lantern companions who had a good relationship with him, Hal Jordan could only smile bitterly and say, "She is a public figure. I know her, but she doesn't know me." The language translator function of the green light ring was unbelievably powerful. The Green Lanterns from several different planets actually understood the meaning of the word public figure. They were a little stunned.
What Hal Jordan could think of, they could naturally think of as well. This random person on Earth was able to fight to a draw with their greatest warrior. How high was this Earthling's strength? Sinisto naturally saw a large number of Green Lantern Corps members converging here. He didn't want his subordinates to see that he hadn't taken down a newcomer after so long. The energy of the light ring began to operate at full force. Relying on his rich experience, he tried to suppress Thea with his strength. A large amount of emotional energy was materialized by him. Swords, giant axes, energy bullets, and they bombarded Thea like raindrops. Although Thea was slightly suppressed, she wasn't dispirited. This battle was unfair from the beginning. How many years had the opponent used his light ring? How many minutes had it taken her? If she could win against this group of people, she would have slit her own throat. She responded to Sinisto's attacks with a learning attitude. Thea absorbed Sinisto's combat experience like a sponge. A lot of knowledge and magic mutually verified each other, which made her a little impulsive. The battle entered a stalemate. Sinisto used all his skills. He felt that he had never been so serious in the training field before. He brought out the determination to fight to the death. He had to suppress Thea. However, as he continued to exert his strength, Thea's various uses of the light ring became more and more proficient under his demonstration. The situation on the battlefield had been maintained at 60% for a long time, while Thea was at 40%. Neither of them had the ability to break the stalemate. Of course, if this continued, Sinisto would definitely win, but he disdained such a victory. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, to rely on a prolonged battle to defeat a newcomer who had used her light ring for a few minutes? He still wanted to save face. In contrast to Sinisto's anxiety, Thea became more and more confident as the battle went on. What greatest warrior? Bah! That was all there was to it. The light ring's main source of energy was emotional conviction. Her confidence increased, and without her noticing, her attacks became stronger. As members of the Green Lantern Corps who had dealt with the green light ring for most of their lives, other than the newcomer Hal Jordan, all of them noticed that Thea's confidence was steadily increasing. What did this mean? It meant that she was confident that she could win. The few of them didn't dare to interrupt the battle. They could only exchange looks of surprise. A few of them even prayed to the gods of their own planets. Lord Sinisto, you must hold on. If you lose, we will all be embarrassed. Sinisto naturally saw Thea's slow but steady increase in conviction. This made him feel a little incredulous. I, the great Sinisto, will not be defeated by you. His hands gathered a huge amount of emotional energy. His arms were like clockwork, tirelessly shooting large amounts of energy balls at Thea. Thea began to constantly dodge in the air. When she couldn't dodge, she used her shield to block. In the end, Thea conjured a pair of wings for herself to increase her mobility in the air. Sinisto's outburst lasted for a full minute before he stopped attacking and focused on the results of his battle. Chapter 272. In a cloud of smoke, Thea saw Sinisto's weakness and took 2 green energy bullets head-on. She then threw out the green emotional chain that the Green Lantern Corps loved to use and tied him up 3 times. However, she still felt that it wasn't secure enough, so she imitated the hexagon light prison and conjured 6 green pillars of light that squeezed Sinisto tightly. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. The battlefield was silent. All the Green Lantern Corps on Ura had heard the news and came over. They couldn't believe that their leader had been defeated, and many of them were silently cheering for Sinisto. However, their silent support didn't have any effect. Instead, it made Sinisto feel humiliated that he had fallen to such a state. Thea's restraints were extremely tight, and he couldn't break free no matter how many times he tried. However, the benefits of having a strong will were evident. Even though Sinisto was furious, he didn't panic and order his giants to give up their advantage to rescue him. Sinisto's giants already had the absolute advantage, and he believed that it wouldn't take long for them to finish off Thea's giants. However, he had no choice but to give up on all of this and rescue the trapped Sinisto first. Thea naturally wouldn't let him escape. She constantly conjured various long-range weapons and joined forces with her giants to attack Sinisto crazily, but their attacks were all eaten by Sinisto's giants. His original 70 meters tall quickly shrunk to 50 meters, and his body was full of holes. However, his sacrifice was worth it. Sinisto used his strength to finally break free before injecting energy into his giants to stabilize their bodies. The rapid depletion of the lamp ring's power dispelled his thoughts of ending the battle quickly. He flew into the giant's body. On one hand, he could control it more flexibly, and on the other hand, he could recover his exhausted stamina. There's such a thing? Thea had always thought that congealing meant fighting separately from the main body. Now that she had learned another trick, she did the same. She flew into the giant's body and familiarized herself with it a little before controlling the body that was several times larger. The giant that looked like Ares was fully controlled by her, as though the ancient gods of Earth had returned to the mortal world. On this planet that was countless light years away from Earth, Ares let out a deafening roar as fighting spirit lingered around his body. Although he was slightly smaller than Sinisto's giant, his aura was stronger. With a spear in hand, he bravely faced Sinisto, who was wielding a giant axe. The Green Light Army was most familiar with the aura surrounding the Ares. It was courage. Unparalleled courage. Even if the Green Lantern Corps wanted to help Sinisto, they couldn't do so. They couldn't question such a noble character. Sinisto relied on his steel-like willpower to face any enemy. He also abandoned his worries and fought fearlessly. The battle between the two became more and more intense. Sinisto won in terms of familiarity with his control, and the intensity of his energy far exceeded Thea's. Thea, on the other hand, was a level higher than him in terms of martial arts. She relied on her skillful techniques to constantly find opportunities to severely injure her opponent. The scale of their battle was getting bigger and bigger, and it was exhilarating. Inexplicably carefree. Thea felt a huge wave of joy. The stronger her fighting spirit, the more the giant she conjured looked like herself. The divinity of Ares that she had obtained that day was rapidly fusing. Originally, she had absorbed less than 20% of it in the past 6 months, but with Thea's fighting spirit being amplified 100-fold by the lamp ring, her fusion speed was rapidly increasing. In this short battle with Sinisto, she had absorbed more than 5% of it. She didn't expect the lamp ring to have such benefits. Thea's originally indifferent attitude changed subtly. If those old fellows were to give her the green light later, should she accept it? The effort and reward seemed a little disproportionate. It was a little difficult to choose. When Sinisto once again repelled Thea's pounce, even his strongest willpower was a little overwhelmed. Thea fully demonstrated what it meant to get stronger the more she fought. The original 6 versus 4 battle was on the verge of ending in a tie. Sinisto began attacking without regard for anything else. He didn't want to continue fighting like this. When the giant was injured, he would use the lamp ring's energy to replenish it. Injury for injury, it was a contest of who had more energy. He ignored Thea's proficient combat techniques. Although the situation was a little ugly, it had to be said that this shameless fighting style had indeed hit Thea's weak spot. She had only obtained the lamp ring for a short period of time, and the time it took to convert her emotions into energy was much longer than Sinisto's. Slowly, she began to run out of energy. When her energy was depleted, it was useless even if she had courage. This was Sinisto's plan. It was simple and crude, using his strength to attack his opponent's weakness. "It won't be that easy to defeat me," Thea shouted loudly. Her giant was impacted by her intense emotions, and its appearance finally became like her. The will of the god of war seemed to have fused with her. The god of war could be defeated, but it would never admit defeat. Countless phantoms appeared behind Thea's giant. This was the scene of the ancient people of Earth fighting against the heavens and the earth. Unyielding. Tenacious. Fight to the end. The giant held a spear and stomped on the ground. With an unstoppable momentum, it charged at Sinisto's giant. "Your tenacity is admirable, but you can't defeat me." As her direct opponent, Sinisto knew her every change like the back of his hand. Unwilling to admit defeat, he squeezed out new energy from his body and infused it into his giant. He conjured a very thick shield and prepared to take Thea's strongest attack head-on. Although Sinisto was extremely calm, he still wavered slightly in the face of Thea's overwhelming momentum. He put away his great axe and injected all his energy into his giant, raising the thick shield with all his might. The surroundings were quiet. Everyone was waiting for the strongest scene of this battle to take place. Thea felt that her momentum had reached its peak. She exerted strength in her legs and leaped into the air. At this moment, her agile figure seemed to have fused with Horus's authority, the bravery of the god of war, and the sharpness of a goshawk. Thea had a premonition that her opponent would definitely not be able to withstand her attack. But something unexpected happened. Boom! Thea's giant exploded violently. Powerful shockwaves surged in all directions. The Green Lantern Corps present hurriedly created barriers to block the turbulent energy waves. Thea, whose face was covered in dust, ignored Sinisto, who was still on guard. She flew angrily to the Guardian's side. What kind of broken ring is this? It actually exploded. Fortunately, she discovered it in time and released the energy in all directions. Otherwise, she would have been in danger as she was at the center. The blue-skinned Guardians were a little speechless. It was just a temporary ring. How much energy did you expect to be able to withstand? Indeed, they had not considered the issue of the maximum energy capacity of the ring. The temporary ring was mainly used for the Green Lantern recruits to adapt to the training. Who among the recruits could use it as fiercely as Sia? She had blown it up. This was something they had not expected.